Any thoughts, Scott?
Testing, 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 testing. Everyone can take their seats, please. Let me start by welcoming everybody to this specially called meeting of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. At this point in time, I'm going to call on Mr. Sloan, please, to call the roll.
Chairman Cope.
Here.
Commissioner Dishner.
Here.
Commissioner Roach. Commissioner Stafford.
Here.
Commissioner Wharton.
Here.
Commissioner Coben.
Here.
Commissioner Watson.
Here.
Commissioner Winton.
Here.
Commissioner Johnston.
Here.
Commissioner Morrison. Secretary Hargett.
Here.
Treasurer Lillard.
Here.
Comptroller Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Soliuk.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have 12 present.
Very good. Do we have a quorum?
We do.
Very good. The next item of business on our agenda is to adopt the agenda that's been presented, and the chair will entertain a motion at this time. A motion, Mayor Wharton, second by Commissioner Coben. All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Next, I want to take an opportunity to make a couple of opening comments, and then we'll move right on into the consultant's presentation. But I want to start by thanking, first of all, my fellow commissioners for making themselves available on this Monday to hear the specially called meeting to consider the proposal of Middle Tennessee State University to adopt and have a law school. I understand we've had commissioners who have traveled from all across the state to be here this morning, and it's much appreciated. I want to thank Dr. McPhee and his staff for working so well with our Higher Education Commission staff, for being very responsive, very thoughtful in the way that you've helped us analyze this process and your proposal, and we appreciate that. And finally, and most importantly to me, I want to thank the academic affairs staff at the Commission, and I want to thank the legal staff at the Commission. As most of you can imagine, this has been a high priority item for the Commission, and our staff has gone above and beyond to conduct this process fairly and to conduct it thoughtfully. And so we're very grateful for all the hard work of our staff. To sort of set the context of what we're here today this morning to do, as you know, we have a statutory duty under TCA 49-7-202 to review and approve or disapprove all proposals for new degrees or degree programs for the establishment of new academic departments or divisions within the various institutions of higher learning. It's also relevant to our meeting this morning to discuss our duty under Tennessee Code 49-7-202, Subpart Q, Subpart 1, Subpart A, which is to study the need for particular programs, departments, and academic divisions with a particular view to the cost and the relevance, and to make recommendations to the respective governing boards for the purpose of minimizing duplication and overlapping of functions and services, and to foster cooperative programs among the various institutions. That duty is reiterated at Tennessee Code 49-7-202, Subpart D, 4C, which states that the master plan developed by this commission should be institutional mission differentiation to minimize redundancy in degree offerings and to realize statewide efficiencies through institutional collaboration. I look forward to a healthy deliberation and debate this morning. This is important to MTSU, it's important to the state, it's important to every institution of higher learning in this state. And with that, I'll call upon our Executive Director, Mike Krause, to give us an overview of the work that's been done by THEC over the past several months. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. We thought it would be helpful this morning just to start out and talk about briefly where are we exactly within the THEC academic program approval process, and also just do a brief piece of historical context about this process that's unfolded. What I would say first, if this meeting feels extraordinary, it is. This is the only the third time since the inception of THEC in 1967 that a new professional school has been up for consideration before the Commission. Obviously, the Quillen College of Medicine in 1974, the Gatton School of Pharmacy more recently in 2005. The points I would make here. First, the Gatton School of Pharmacy being the most recent analog, I did want to go back and take a look at how that process unfolded. A couple things were different, the most important of which was the timeline. The Gatton School of Pharmacy discussion unfolded over the course of more than a year. This has been faster. This has unfolded over the course of 3 months, 67 business days to be exact. That accelerated timeline before the commission, and actually this special called meeting itself, really is a function of our attempt at the staff level to be responsive to MTSU's requests. As I'm certain you'll hear from Dr. McPhee, there's some timeline sensitivities here around this proposal, and we wanted to make sure that we were accommodating those as much as we could. And that really is the reason why we're here today, and it's the reason why this has moved so fast. I want to echo Chairman Cope's thanks to the staff. For the last several weeks, this has been all many members of our staff have been working on to make sure that today was able to happen, to make sure that first and foremost, there is a fair hearing setting, and also that we're within the purview of our policy. To visit that policy really quickly, THEC policy A10, which is relative to new academic programs, really has 3 phases. We are in phase 1. When an institution wishes to create a new academic program, any new academic program, this is the roadmap that we follow. What is unique here is that during the campus interest phase, we pressed pause. Given that letter of notification, and if you look within our policy, the letter of notification has to address 4 main areas. Given what was a surface level concern, just with duplication in and of itself, that caused us to communicate with Dr. McPhee to say we want an external feasibility study from out of state. I will tell you the decision to get an external feasibility study from out of state was driven by 2 other factors. One, I've referenced, the gravity of the question before us. That felt like a question that needs to be answered from external experts that have no stake in this decision. The second point, though, very clearly is the public comments that we received. We received 26 public comments over the course of the period, all of which have been provided to you. Some in support, some not in support. I will tell you that's the highest level of public comment we've ever received on any academic program. And I think that it indicated, and in our minds, good judgment was to pause and assess via an external study. Just to review the timeline really quickly, you'll see that July 12th really triggered the beginning of formal action once the letter of notification was received from Dr. McPhee. The public comment period commenced shortly thereafter. The acquisition process of an external consultant, I want to particularly thank our counsel's office along with CPO for assisting us with identifying, bidding, and awarding an external feasibility study in a period of about 3 weeks to a month, which, if those of you familiar with state government, is warp speed. I also want to thank the consultants themselves who, I think during the first project meeting when we said this is the timeline, were presented with certainly a very ambitious request from us. They heeded that. You'll see multiple in-state visits, one after the other, multiple out-of-state conversations with stakeholders at the national level. Final point, and then Mr. Chairman, I will defer to the consultants to present the feasibility report. I think at first, you always wonder, this is a unique proposal by any stretch of the imagination. Finding a consultant who's able to answer really important empirical questions with integrity was our first priority. When we were able to identify Dr. Smolik and her group, Dr. Smolik previously worked at McKinsey & Company as a consultant, and they've worked through with 300 college and university partners. I think we were most heartened to see the specific experience around legal issues and matters of legal education. So really to set the stage for what you're about to hear is an external consultant that we asked to take a step back and answer a series of questions, which I believe they will outline for you. And we look forward to the discussion that follows. I want to would be remiss if I didn't thank Dr. McPhee and his team. We have been in daily, weekly communication. I know many of you all have as well. I think at all times we can be transparent. There's sensitive parts of this conversation. At all times, Middle Tennessee State University handled those with transparency in class, and we sought to extend the same to them as well. And so I'm grateful to Dr. McPhee and his board for their leadership in that regard. And with that, Dr. Smolik, I would ask you to come up.
First challenge. Good morning, everybody. Up, down, middle, about right? Okay. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Mike, for the introduction. When the Commission scheduled the meeting for October the 15th, I thought it was for my personal convenience because this time next week I would be unable to attend. I will be in the process of getting a hip replacement. So we could not have changed the timeline if we had tried. And that's also by way of saying if I bob and weave a bit up here, don't worry, I'm just trying to get comfortable. So my name is Dr. Jane Sad-Smolik. I have been working in higher education since 2001. As Mike mentioned, when I was with EduVentures, I did studies for Pierce Law when they were contemplating joining the University of New Hampshire. I worked with Vermont Law, and for a fairly substantial period of time, I was actually the Chief Financial Officer of Concord School of Law, which is the 100% online law school accredited in California by the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary and Vocational Education. So I had quite a lot of experience with law school operations and quite a good understanding of the market, if you will, for students seeking law schools. And I was very glad to be able to refresh and update my knowledge in this process. The Commission asked us to undertake basically 3 threads. So probably the other part of the reason why we were hired by the Commission is that we have no single template for doing feasibility studies. We are extraordinarily flexible, and in this case, we flexed ourselves extraordinarily. The Commission specifically asked us to speak with multiple stakeholders across the state in order to get their feedback about the concept of a new JD program and a new law school at Middle Tennessee State University, MTSU from here onwards before I mess that up. They asked us to conduct data analysis, which we did primarily because of the time frame. We would have preferred to have conducted primary market research, but the time frame was prohibitive. So we had to use basically published data from secondary sources, largely the extensive reports that law schools make to the ABA, but also supported by reports to the Law School Admissions Council, the Law School Transparency Project, and even, God bless us, some more academic research that we felt was relevant to what we're doing here. And lastly, we were asked to conduct case studies of organizations that have undergone a change of ownership, I guess is what you would call it. We tried to find an organization that has crossed state lines, but there really is no institutional memory at Stanford, since that was in the 1960s, of what that really undertook. But we were able to speak with both John Marshall in Chicago, which is not John Marshall of Atlanta, but the good John Marshall in this case, who are currently in the process of becoming a part of the University of Illinois at Chicago. And we also spoke extensively with what was former Texas Wesleyan, sometimes I get those confused, which became a part of Texas A&M in 2013. Steering those conversations was a little challenging because my background was such that I naturally kind of wanted to put together a strategy for running and operating a successful law school. But the remit from the Higher Education Commission was to stay firmly focused on whether there is a need and what is the nature and the shape of that need for another law school in the state of Tennessee. So, yay. What I'm going to take you through is, in our report, we presented basically 6 key findings. You're all so glad that my charts are word charts and not charts with lots of numbers on them, because your heads would get awfully tired of looking sideways. So my numbers are primarily word charts when our report has some of the data in it that supports these findings. So can I pause for a moment, please? I need a copy of the presentation right in front of me. Sorry, Betty. Thank you. Thank you. Like you, I can't read at great distances at my tender age. Okay. So I'm going to present to you basically key findings in about 6 areas. I am going to do what I don't advise my students to do, and that is to say that I'm going to give you my key findings and then my conclusion. That will be the briefest part of my presentation, and then I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about the key findings, okay? So the first key finding is that with relationship in relation to the enrollment cycle, so I'm using a very classic model of inputs, throughputs, and outputs here. Inputs, the students going in, throughputs, the academic process, and outputs, what happens to those students when they graduate. The enrollment cycle, increased competition for qualified students will raise the cost of recruiting for all law schools in the state, but will not create commensurate value. That is our first finding. Our second finding is in regards to experiential education. So this is in the throughput. This is in the middle of the sort of the flow here. Increased competition for a fixed number of opportunities for experiential education, especially in the middle of the state, will challenge current students, but most especially will challenge current students in the bottom half of their classes. The law is really an extraordinary business in terms of ranking students in classes, and the top 10 to 25% of students get a lot of glory, and the bottom half of students are probably the ones that we hear a lot less about, and who are presented with much steeper challenges in order to achieve their career goals and aspirations. Whoops. How does that work? Nope. That work? Okay. Key finding in regard to the employment of graduates. At full enrollment capacity, so this is acknowledging that some of the schools in the state are under capacity at the moment in terms of their ability to enroll students, there will be roughly a balance between the numbers graduating from current law schools in Tennessee and projected employment opportunities. A new school will not increase employment opportunities. That's pretty obvious. They don't go out there and make the jobs, I'm afraid to say. But it will increase competition for current opportunities. A substantial amount of our conversations with practitioners and stakeholders and with the schools themselves revolved around the topic of access to justice, which is an initiative that has also been promoted by the Tennessee Supreme Court. What we find is that while access to justice is an important mission and initiative, a new law school will not improve the economics of providing legal services to the underserved. Okay, we'll go into that in a little bit of detail a little bit further down. I can see Dr. McPhee looking a little puzzled by that. Financing. It is our opinion that MTSU will need to reallocate more dollars than proposed in the letter of notification to balance the new school's budget. And we'll sort of summarize those at the end of the presentation. And lastly, we go to the topic of reputation. Once again, the business, if you will, of operating a law school is really substantially different than any other undergraduate program for sure, and most graduate programs as well. The concept of reputation, which is one that is embraced, unfortunately, by just about everybody in the law school business. It is embraced by academics. It is certainly embraced by U.S. News and World Report in terms of selling their annual law school rankings issues. It is embraced by students looking to get themselves into the most highest ranked law school that they possibly can in order to further open up opportunities. A good reputation at inception is critical to the success of a law school, and Valparaiso does not have a good reputation. So here's the kind of capstone, if you will. After weighing the evidence, we argue that a new public law school in the middle of Tennessee should not be approved by the Higher Education Commission. So in this case, we have a singular recommendation supported by our findings. And I hope that you will bear with me while I go a little more into detail in regards to those findings. First, talking about the enrollment cycle. What we're saying here is that increased competition for qualified students will raise the cost of recruiting for all Tennessee law schools. Why do we say that? The most important thing to note here, and we actually anticipated that you all would have had access to our report rather than it having been distributed to the Commission and I believe to Middle Tennessee State, right? Yep, got it right this time, second in a row, good. We anticipated that you all would have had access to the report, so we did not put numbers up here in our presentation. But let me explain that. What we mean by a qualified student is somebody who gets a score on the law school admissions test that is associated with a reasonable probability of passing the bar exam. While the Law School Admissions Council advises everybody who uses LSAT scores to not impose an arbitrary or a cutoff number, generally speaking, LSAT scores of 145 or below are associated with something like less than a 50% chance of passing the bar exam upon graduation. Okay, so what matters to law schools is the admissions process in some senses is much more challenging. It is not about open admissions like it is with almost all other areas of adult higher education, where most schools espouse an open admissions policy. In law schools, it is about finding qualified students. That is to say, students who have got LSAT test numbers that reasonably indicate that they're going to be able to pass the bar exam, along with GPAs and obviously lots of other characteristics as well, but probably the strongest indicator of ability to pass the bar exam is the LSAT test. So what we're saying is that current Tennessee law schools have the capacity to expand their classes by collectively about 100 students if they could find and recruit within their budgets those qualified applicants. What we also say is that there is excess capacity. This was a simple statistic to quote. So there is excess capacity across the nation, not just in Tennessee. The data show that the average size of a 1L, a first-year law school class, shrank from 260 in the 2010-11 academic year to 183 in the 2017-18 academic year. Okay? So across the nation, not just in Tennessee, 1L law school classes have been shrinking as schools collectively have not been able to recruit and matriculate qualified students. And just so you know, a little sensitivity analysis here, decreasing the number of law schools by 20%, because we do know that there are some law schools in the nation that are in the process of closing, Charlotte Law being one of them, and I can't remember what all of the other ones are. Decreasing the number of law schools by 20% would not absorb all of that additional capacity. So while we acknowledge that there is some capacity that will go away, it really won't make a big dent on the overall capacity across the nation for qualified students. What we say here is that the pool of applicants, particularly qualified applicants, may expand slightly because of a new school in the middle of the state, but not proportionately to support a law school aspiring to a class of 70 to 100 new students per year. Okay? So there may be, we acknowledge, there may be some people in Middle Tennessee who, for whatever reasons, are not going to law school, are not getting admitted into a school that is good enough for them to reasonably secure a good career opportunities. The pool could expand a little. It's very hard to analyze the actual LSAT test taker data because the biggest unknown is the number of students who take the LSAT but who do not apply to law school. And while we were able to get data about the number of Tennesseans applying to Tennessee schools and whether they were admitted, what we don't have data about is the number of Tennesseans who possibly applied to a Tennessee school but also applied to out-of-state schools. The out-of-state schools made them more attractive scholarship offers, and they went out-of-state instead of staying with an in-state school. So let's talk about the role of scholarships, okay? Hang on. Okay, let's try one more time. Nope. miracles. So to attract qualified applicants, schools offer scholarships. They offer scholarships very competitively, and it costs a lot of money. Okay? To attract qualified applicants, the annual expenditure on scholarships ranges from $1.2 million at Memphis to over $3.5 million at UTK or Lincoln Memorial. Discounting percentages range from 20% at Memphis to 33% at Belmont to over 50% at UTK and Lincoln Memorial. Remember what we're talking about here, discounts or scholarships, nearly always from institutional funds. There is no such thing as a Pell Grant for graduate students, so basically the scholarship is coming from institutional funds, whether it's set-aside funds or whether it is general funds. But scholarships are a huge line item in most law schools' budgets. One dean that we spoke to recommended that a new school needs to budget the equivalent about 50% of its tuition revenue for scholarships in the early years of its operation. And what we go on to say is that the competition for minority students is the most vigorous, because everybody is promoting a mission to try and increase the number of minority students in law school. And so the competition for those minority students tends to be more vigorous than even competition for the majority type students. So let's just sort of recap the numbers. The dollars of scholarships for Memphis, $1.2 million. The dollars of scholarships for both UTK, is that what I said up there? 3.5 million at Lincoln Memorial and UTK. So we'll bear those numbers in mind. I'm not having a good time with this. Let me go back one. So competition for qualified minority students is the most vigorous. The interesting part is that competition for qualified, by virtue of the city's demographics and culture, Memphis is doing a good job of serving the African American law student. Specifically, the data shows that even if one were to include historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs, such as Howard, Southern, and North Carolina Central, Memphis is 8th ranked in the nation in terms of the proportion of African American students in its 1L student body. May not be a very large number, but Memphis is doing a really solid job in terms of providing opportunities and making a friendly environment for African American law school students. What we also note is when we're talking about minorities that there are more Hispanic first-year law students than Asian Americans or African Americans. And we further note that Hispanic students were actually the largest minority at Valparaiso. I mean, it came as a little bit of a surprise to me that Valparaiso, when it talks about its prowess at recruiting minority students, was actually talking about its Hispanic student body. And that actually probably aligns slightly better with the demographics, at least of Nashville, maybe not quite so much the demographics of Murfreesboro and Rutherford County. What we're also saying here, and I think that this is probably, to put it kindly, institutions that admit riskier students, those with lower grade point averages and LSAT scores, are potentially setting those students up to fail. And there is one quote which I forgot to attribute to a source, so I'll have to go back and find it, being a very proper academic. It makes what they are doing even worse, and using diversity as a shield is troubling. There was another comment from one of our interviewees that basically said that in empowering minorities to go to law school, but also in taking on humongous amounts of debt in order to be able to do so, they are making victims. We are empowering them, but we are making them victims at the same time. And this was a comment that resonated very powerfully with us. Let's talk about experiential education. It is... maybe? Yay. Experiential education. Experiential education, so it starts off by saying the ABA encourages all law schools to promote opportunities for law students to provide at least 50 hours of pro bono service over their law school careers. That 50 hours of pro bono service may or may not count towards their experiential education, the experiential education component of their degree programs. The ABA further requires that the JD curriculum include at least 6 credit hours of experiential education. So this is a requirement of a quality school across all the ABA, and it is going to be something that all of the schools currently meet, and something that a law school at Middle Tennessee would also have to meet. Experiential education, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, consists of field placements, which could be internships or externships. And I'm still to this day confused about which one is an intern and which one is an extern, which is the reason why I'm using it as sort of field placement generically. It could include clinics, or it could include something called simulation, which is a simulated client-like experience supervised by faculty. And what we're saying is that students from all of the ABA accredited schools, including Vanderbilt here in Tennessee, compete for that limited number of opportunities, okay? And it is a limited number of opportunities, a limited and probably declining number of opportunities when you talk about anything that is not met through simulation. The rub of it is that most of the practitioners, including the judges that we spoke with, look only at the resumes of the top 10 to 25% of the class when considering people for work-related field placement. So once again, we have this sort of system where the top of the class is being positioned, the top of the class from the top school is being positioned to excel. And we've got this bottom 50% problem. I mean, it was absolutely amazing. You know, one of my favorite stories is sort of my Lake Wobegon story, where everybody is above average. And clearly, you know, when you go into law school, where do you expect to be? Probably everybody in this room who either went to law school or is thinking of going to law school thought they were above average. I thought I was above average. But apparently, when you really think about it, average means that half of the people are above you and half of the people are below you. And for those half of the people who are below average, the amount of effort that they have to put into finding opportunities kind of is significantly more, let's put it nicely, than the amount of effort that would go into if you were automatically in the top 10 to 25% of the class. Clinics operated by law schools are an expensive way to meet experiential education requirements. That is to say that they have a relatively small, I believe the number that was quoted to us is 8-to-1, a small student-to-faculty ratio, and other costs that are equivalent to running a small law firm. The ABA permits simulated experiences, as we said, but those simulated experiences do not offer students the opportunity to build the network that is critical upon graduating. And boy, is the law a business of networking. I mean, when you read the report, I think that you will just find networking, 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 networking. It is how the top students found jobs. It is how the good practitioners manage their businesses. It is really a profession which emphasizes networking for many, many reasons, and it works for the profession by and large. But if you don't get your foot on the bottom rung during your field placement experiences, you may find yourself, again, having to work way more hard in order to reach a decent place in your profession. What else did we say? And the other part about it is that coming back to the middle of the state, UTK, the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, has found it necessary to operate what it calls a semester in residence as a capstone class for its 3L students, of which the main component is 30 hours a week of field placement. So what UTK is saying is that the city of Knoxville is a great city, right? We all know that. We love the place. But that the Nashville market is much bigger when it comes to permanent placement law opportunities. And so it needs to be able to offer its students a way for them to be able to get field placement experience during their third year as law school students so that they have access to the job opportunities that may arise coming out of those experiences. Going to talk about employment of law school graduates. What we're saying here is that to date, the state has been successful in absorbing the increased number of graduates generated by Belmont and Lincoln Memorial, both of which began operations in the last 10 years. What we also note, of course, is that the net number of graduates has barely increased as class sizes have gone down at some of the other schools in the state, specifically UTK and Memphis. So the state has stayed, bumpily, reasonably in balance in terms of finding job opportunities for its law school students. But a price has already been paid in terms of excess capacity at Memphis and Knoxville. Unemployment, that is to say, the rate of unemployment 10 months after graduation, which is the stake in the ground that the ABA measures, at 7.5% for Tennessee law schools, is lower than the national average, which is about 10%. I would note here that the rate of unemployment for the same year for Valparaiso was actually 21.6%. Okay, so the state of Tennessee is doing better, law schools, I should say, in the state of Tennessee, regardless of whether they're placing their students in-state or out-of-state, are doing a reasonably good job of placing them, and the rate of unemployment is at 7.5%. Lincoln Memorial, by the way, of all the schools in the state, had the highest rate of unemployment among its students at, it's here somewhere, about 17%, I think. And so even Lincoln Memorial's rate of unemployment amongst its law school students is lower than the rate of unemployment amongst Valparaiso law school students. And one of the indicators we were told of the quality of placements that law school students take is whether or not they go into solo practice. And what we note here is that a very slightly higher proportion of Tennessee graduates go into solo practice. I think the amount is about 3%, compared with nationally about 1%. So whichever way you look at it, the amounts are minuscule, and it is not to us, therefore, a significant indicator that graduates of Tennessee law schools are going into solo practice because they can't find other employment opportunities. However, this is sort of fun, but not really fun. It required me to put on my economist hat, and I am not going to explain the industrial input-output matrix which underlies the Bureau of Labor Statistics 10-year employment projections, because I couldn't if I tried. But what I am going to say is that almost all of us in the higher education business rely on the Bureau of Labor Statistics 10-year projections by occupation to ground, if you will, our numbers about whether the number of students earning degrees is approximately the same as the number of jobs that are going to be created due to openings, new jobs, growth, or separation in the workforce. There are some problems with this data. And there are some problems. We can really only use it as a sort of a stake and then kind of look to one side of the stake in order to interpret that piece of data. First off, what we would say is that the projection made in 2006 for 2016 is now an actual. We can see how good the projection was. And nationally, the BLS predicted that there would be 898,000 lawyers in the country, and there are only 792,000. So there is a gap there of about 100,000, where the 2006 projection overprojected what was likely to be. The reason for that is primarily that these projections are premised on a full employment. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics does not intentionally take into account adjustments in the level of economic activity. And I sure hope that the level of economic activity doesn't really go like this, but that's what my hand wants to do when I'm talking about it. It's premised on full employment, and it is intended to indicate structural changes in the economy, the movement between, say, for example, manual occupations and analytical occupations, the movements between manufacturing sector and IT sector, those kinds of things. It is not necessarily intended to be a sort of a pinpoint estimate that we can all take for granted. So with that in mind, we believe that the annual openings due to growth and separations is actually most likely a best case number. We do have, and we'd like to go on to talk about some other factors that are affecting the employment of lawyers. We're going to divide this into two sets. One is national factors, and then the other is Tennessee-specific factors. Nationally, the key items that were brought to our attention, at least in the beginning of our interviews, to the point where we actually asked about them later in our interviews, I'm afraid to say, is technology and artificial intelligence. And as with so many other professions, things are changing. The tasks that used to be performed by young lawyers, reading documents, basically have been automated. Machines go in and search for keywords. I mean, it's that easy. Lawyers no longer need stickums and highlighters. They probably still carry them, and so do I, but the machine does most of the work, and then with the machine having flagged and highlighted the relevant documents, the job of the attorney is then to, summarize and make sure that the context of the reference is relevant. There is an MIT labor economist who is quoted as saying, current technology is replacing roughly 2% of a lawyer's total workload per year. And there is my alma mater, McKinsey Global Institute, says that 22% of a lawyer's job and 35% of a law clerk's job can be automated. Okay? So that is still out there. We do acknowledge that the Bureau of Labor Statistics projections, they've got a wonderful bunch of experts, and they try to take technology into account. Obviously, they don't reveal to us which articles they read and which ones were influential in their thinking, so we can't tell you whether they have really already crunched these things through their models, but we're putting them out there as evidence in support of the fact that technology is and artificial intelligence in particular are changing the nature of the lawyer's job. There's a change in client relationships, okay? Clients can do more for themselves because of technology out there. Research is just that much easier. Not just corporate clients being able to use technology, but also more people are in the world of, do-it-yourself lawyering. You can use LegalZoom to pull down a form for a will. You can find out what it takes, to file a financial affidavit. So there is, if you are a reasonably well-educated person, the ability to be able to do it yourself when it comes to legal affairs. Some of the people that we spoke to would say that's absolutely wonderful because when they mess up, it means that there is more business for me to unwind the mess-ups. But we don't know whether the mess-ups are, and it sounds like some people around about the table might have had some experience with messing up and having to correct the mess-ups. But we don't know whether it's 90% of the people who are satisfied with their self-help and only 10% of the people who mess up. None of that data has really come about yet. The other part of it is that in terms of corporate law, corporations are pushing back at the billable hours from young associates. And most corporations also have increasing access to experienced experts who prefer what we call the gig economy, and they can work in the gig economy because their services are offered through nationwide legal services organizations. So, if you were practicing law and you got tired of the billable hours treadmill and you wanted to get off of that billable hours treadmill, you could go to work for one of these legal services firms. You could be in New Jersey servicing a hospital in Knoxville, but if you have the healthcare experience and background as a senior corporate attorney with healthcare expertise, you're going to do a pretty good job at filling in an awful lot of the need. That person may not necessarily be based in Tennessee when he or she is a part of one of these legal services organizations. So there's this outsourcing effect that is going on as well. We can't completely quantify the result of this. All we can really say is that one person that we spoke to cited that where he used to have sort of roughly speaking 4 associates working for him at different levels, junior associates and senior associates and in-between associates, the ratio is moving towards 1 associate per partner. That would be a pretty dramatic change in terms of the numbers of openings at the bottom of the pile for new law school graduates. Oops. In Tennessee, the first point almost embarrasses me, but because I've got a whole nother spiel about what I have referred to as the customary age of retirement. If we take that the customary age of retirement is 65, gentlemen around the table all pointing to ourselves, there are many of us who have surpassed the customary age of retirement and who intend to go on surpassing the customary age of retirement. And in fact, in the state of Tennessee, it turns out that about 10% of total people practicing as attorneys are indeed already over the age of 65, the customary age of retirement. So, and are still enjoying what they're doing and are still very active. This is not people who just, maintain their local bar association memberships. It's more than that. And again, the Bureau of Labor Statistics does say that it, to some extent, takes into account what they call separations from the workforce. And we note that separations from the workforce for lawyers is a much lower rate than separations from the workforce in all legal occupations, which includes legal support workers. But we can't say the extent to which this Tennessee trend, it was pointed out to us to be a Tennessee trend, it might be a national trend, I don't know, has been taken into account in the projections data. There are some legislative and Supreme Court rule changes that have also served to reduce attorney caseloads. And being as how this is the state of Tennessee, it is probably not the last of those initiatives. It is probably something that is ongoing. And here we just itemize malpractice reform, workers' compensation, arbitration, tort reform, and some access to justice reforms. Such initiatives, we would suggest, particularly in regard to Tennessee, tend to render meaningless ratios like the ratio of population to lawyers, and the one that we had an even harder time with, the ratio of population to law schools in the state. As it happens, the law schools in the state of Tennessee, even though there are 6 of them, tend to be small relative to the national average-sized law schools. So you may have 6 of them, but because the ratio is meaningless, it doesn't make any sense for me to debate the meaningless of something that is meaningless, right? So I will go on. We do. Okay. We note that ability to repay student loan balances remains a major concern amongst stakeholders. Okay. It was raised at probably virtually in every conversation that we had. The JD is a 3-year program. Most students attend full-time. Schools and the ABA discourage working during the first year because the program is so intense. Students must therefore fund not just tuition, but also their cost of living expenses, whether, food, car, transportation, and potentially housing if you aren't living at home with mom and dad. We note that the monthly amount to pay off a $100,000 loan at a 5% coupon over 10 years is over $1,000. And to put that in context, this represents about 15% of the median annual earnings for attorneys in Tennessee, based on a median earning of, roughly speaking, $42 per hour and assuming 2,000 hours worked per year. What that means, because this is the median, right, halfway, what that means is that half of the attorneys in the state are earning less than that, and that $1,000 a month loan payment is a higher proportion of their total income. We don't even want to start talking about what it's like when we look at it from a disposable income point of view. We leave you with that. We leave the employment sector segment with the thought that the ability to cover that student loan payment has probably not kept pace with the growth in salaries. We do want to take a couple of minutes to talk about the Access to Justice initiative and mission. But we note that underserved can refer to two populations. It can refer to prospective students from certain ethnic or racial backgrounds. It can also refer to ethnic, racial, or socioeconomic groups of citizens of the state who lack access to justice for reasons of knowledge, information, as well as, and probably most critically, ability to pay. While there are legal services through Legal Services Corporation, public defenders' offices, blah, 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 for the indigent, there is a huge gap above the indigent and below ability to pay, where access to legal services is definitely a tough thing. But what we note is that while a noble aspiration, some stakeholders questioned the ability of the law school to impact access to justice, meaning quantity-wise, how many lawyers really are going to want to go out there and work for less than that median wage, because the cost effectiveness, the economics of it, just simply don't support a student out there. We go on to note that the recent increase in... Did I do it? Okay, good. Sorry. The increase in the hourly rate paid for state-level out-of-court services will help those willing to be appointed by the court to serve those in needs of the needs of the indigent. We note that technology will provide better and faster access to legal services to the large middle class who need but can't afford legal services. There's an awful lot going in that area, largely sponsored by some of the citizens of Tennessee. We note that altruism is well and good. In other words, this is one of those things where everybody says access to justice, but the economics have to work in order for there to be actually any traction to be gained here. Shortages of lawyers in rural areas of the state were mentioned repeatedly by practitioners, but they're unlikely to be filled without a systematic approach to making it economically and socially attractive. And we note that the Community Defender's Office out of Knoxville makes it economically attractive because they pay the same salary for a community defender in Greenville, which I understand is rural, as they do in Knoxville. But they attracted 1/5 of the applicants to their open position in the rural area, despite the fact that it was paying the same level salary as their position in Knoxville. So that's why we are saying that the putting of young lawyers back in quote-unquote rural areas has to be both economically and socially attractive in order for it to make a dent in terms of access to justice in those areas. Another of our interviewees said that she went to NYU Law School, I think it was, which espouses a mission to access to justice, but she noted that 2/3 of her class went to work for big law school firms, even though their reason for choosing NYU in the first place was because of its mission to access to justice. So when paying back those student loans calls, you go for the best job you can get.
Dr. Smolik, I do not at all want to curtail the Commission's consideration. At the same time, I want to be respectful of the stakeholders that do have time on the agenda to talk. So I would ask if it pleases the Commission, I think we have 2 more sections, and as briskly as we could move forward before the question and answer period, if that's all right with the board.
My apologies, everybody.
No, of course.
We say that it is costly to launch and operate a law school. We note that the public law schools in Tennessee are not currently operating at a surplus, primarily because they are under capacity. We note that the institutional reallocation proposed in Middle Tennessee State letter of notification totals $20 million just in the period covered by the letter of notification. We note that scholarships alone, which are vital to the recruitment of essentially highly qualified students, could be equal to 40 to 50% of the school's revenue, not just throughout its startup period, but 30+% of its revenue after that. We have not commented on it in other parts of the presentation, but we note that the cost of faculty compensation may be underestimated, the number of faculty and the cost may be underestimated. We note that student retention and transfers, which are a relatively small factor in Tennessee, but they are a factor, have not been comprehended in the financial projections. We're particularly concerned that a transfer war could erupt with one school trying to compete for the most highly qualified 1L students of another law school. And we lastly note that the cost of academic support services aimed at ensuring that a diverse law class can succeed in completing the program and pass the bar exam may be underestimated. So we are concerned about the use of financial resources at MTSU and potentially across the state as well. And lastly, we're just going to present you with a very small amount of data about Valparaiso, which is really one of the underpinnings of our finding that Valparaiso has a poor recommendation. What this is saying is that Valparaiso graduates have not performed well in the 3 most recent cycles of the bar exam. The first data point you see there, 2015, is actually the numbers passing the bar exam within 2 years, and it is therefore not directly comparable to the data in the 2016-2017 columns. But you can see that Valparaiso was 20 percentage points below Lincoln Memorial based on the 2-year success rate in 2015, and that its 2016 and 2017 bar pass rates, usually in both the states of Illinois and Indiana, with very little difference, are very, very low. Law school students look at these data. The school is required to disclose this data to prospective students, and this is a huge negative. That's the end of my formal comments, right? So unfortunately, I get to take questions at this point. Ouch!
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open for any questions. We want to be mindful of the time, but I want to make sure that everybody on this commission has an opportunity to ask all the questions that you want to. So what I would request is that if everybody can ask maybe one question, then a follow-up until everybody who wants to ask in the first round is asked. That way everybody gets an opportunity. So who would like to go first? Mr. Stafford.
Thank you for your presentation. I want to understand, you talked about reputation being poor or not good at Valparaiso. Can you maybe just quickly summarize what it would take to improve the overall reputation of a law school to make it truly competitive or in a upper tier?
It is hard not to think of law school reputation in terms of the factors that go into the U.S. News and World Report rankings, 40% of which is based on peer academic and practitioner feedback to surveys put out by U.S. News and World Report. Some of it is associated with admission standards, some of it is associated with employment and bar pass rates. There's a small factor for expenditures, etc. Single largest factor, obviously, is the reputational factor. Valparaiso has been performing poorly for a number of years. It is unranked, so it is in the bottom quartile of all law schools. It has a major PR campaign at best ahead of it to try and influence those reputational factors. But more to the point, it probably has to find a way without a reputation to recruit a great class with LSAT scores that show a substantial probability of passing the bar exam, so not the 145 cutoff that we talked about, but significantly higher than that. It's about expense, quite frankly, sir. You know, it's about expense, and it is about a long time frame. It will not happen quickly.
May I just add to that one of the concerns that we had with our 30 stakeholder interviews is nearly every single person that we spoke to about this knew something of this about Valparaiso, and almost every single person raised concern that is not a high tier law school.
Commissioner Watson.
And that's of some concern in a fairly closed community.
You mentioned cost. Do you know what the average cost per student at, say, the University of Memphis is, law school, or at UTK?
We did not do the data on that, sir. I'm sorry to say. We do have a chart in our report about the number of faculty and the cost of faculty, I think, but we did not look at the total overall cost of per student.
We do, however, have information in the report on the estimated total costs of scholarships over several years to understand, because that really is in a sense that is a discount, that is tuition that is not being brought in.
Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Would you identify yourself, please?
Oh, I'm
Because you
Scott
haven't
Jeffy.
spoken yet before.
I'm so sorry. I'm Scott Jeffy. I'm Senior Director at Islanian Market Research. I'm Jane's second on this project. So sorry.
Right.
Next question. Commissioner Coben?
In doing my research for today, I spoke to a dean of a law school here in Tennessee, and they indicated that one of the most important things in establishing a new law school is selecting the dean, that can actually make or break the whole deal. Did you have any comments with the people that you spoke with or in your experience about the importance of the role of the dean?
Just what that person said, yes. The selection of the dean, I mean, again, this gets into the strategy of operating a law school, really, the strategy of operating a successful law school, which was not what was in our remit. But yes, practitioners also said the same thing, asked to name names. The person that I'm thinking of that I spoke with really could not come up with a single example of a person that she thought had the experience to grow a law school virtually from scratch and be successful at it.
Could I ask one more?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Mr. Coben.
And I have one more question. You mentioned the importance of networking in the field of law.
Could you all turn your mic off? I think that's what's holding us up.
Am I on there? Okay. You mentioned the importance of networking in the law field. And I wondered, does that certainly carry forward when law school graduates are looking for jobs? Do you find that the networking also applies to what school they came from? And I'm imagining that it does. What kind of an uphill climb will MTSU have given the already established network of the law schools at the University of Tennessee and the University of Memphis?
So let me answer you a little flippantly. Not nearly as bad as if they were in Arkansas or Alabama. By that I mean that Arkansas and Alabama apparently are very much sort of single law school states from their flagship public universities. But yes, networking with alumni is a significant activity that law school graduates who want to be successful must undertake, and it was cited as the way by several of our interviewees as to how they got their jobs.
Could I add to that by saying that in two cases of the stakeholders that we interviewed in Knoxville, we were told that, and this is apropos to the Lincoln Memorial situation, which had a tough start. Two of our stakeholders said that they do not hire anyone from LMU without calling the dean of LMU to check and have a talk about this person. That's one very important story in our way of thinking. And the second was that numerous stakeholders across the states, that practitioners that hire interns, externs, and associates, indicated that in this compressed job market where they do not get to hire 3 every year or 5 every year or 10 every year, they are only screening in people from their alma mater.
If I could, I want to follow up on that question. How would that not be true for any new law school?
Exactly.
So when would a new law school ever have an advantage in that aspect of it?
They will never.
And is it fair to criticize MTSU because they don't have a law school right now when they're here today to ask for one?
No, it's not really fair to criticize them for that, but it is a fact of this profession, and it's one that the school is going to have to grapple with. That's how we look at it as. We would also note, by the way, that Most corporate law jobs, according to the people that we spoke with, most corporate law jobs do not go to the new graduate. They go to the experienced practitioner who gets tired of practice and then goes, quote unquote, in-house. So we found the proposition that MTSU graduates will find jobs in the corporate sector where there are many, many great successful MTSU graduates to be a little naive as it pertains to law graduates.
Comptroller Wilson.
This is more perhaps a philosophical question, but your entire presentation is based on law school being basically a trade school where you go there to become a lawyer to get a law degree and then practice law. Traditionally, historically, law schools have not been this. It's only in the last 50 years or so. To what extent should we consider the advantages? A law degree was an undergraduate degree. Should we consider the liberal education values of legal education, and how does this tie into all this, and what is the need, particularly at MTSU, for this? Because I tend to see one.
So a law degree in England is still an undergraduate degree?
Yes, that's right.
There you go. Yeah, and I dated every lawyer that I could possibly find, but none of them wanted to marry me, so I had to come to America instead. There. MTSU has a pre-law program, undergraduate program, which I think graduates around about 70 students per year. So to some extent at the undergraduate level, one assumes that the pre-law program, which is your typical...
That's to go to law school, though. It's not for the legal education.
Yeah. I mean, philosophically, I'm not sure that we could answer that question here and now in a short period of time.
I may ask Dr. McPhee.
Commissioner Dishner.
Could you discuss for us, excuse me, could you discuss for us the process of how you interviewed MTSU in this process and how that was incorporated into the report?
So our interview schedule included 2 days in Nashville at the beginning of our study where we met in person with senior executives from all of the law schools except MTSU. Because we recognized that it was important to make sure that we heard the voice of MTSU. We met with Dr. McPhee, the provost, the assistant provost, the chief financial officer, and a couple of others by video conference, and spoke with them by video conference. And we also spoke with the chairman of the Board of Trustees of Middle Tennessee State University as well. He initiated that conversation. He wanted to speak with us.
Other questions? Mayor Wharton.
Are you at all familiar with the transfer of the Cumberland School of Law, which was in Lebanon, Tennessee, to the Samford School down in Alabama, and how it has gone on to become a law school of very high reputation? Do you have any idea how that school managed to rise to such prominence, transferring from one state to another?
I would say that we did not specifically reach out to Cumberland because that transfer, if memory serves me correctly, was in the 1960s. So I guess that you would say that rise has taken place over, where are we now, 60 or so years. That's the first point that I would make. The one that the specific event that I am more familiar with is the transfer of Pierce Law, which was an independent law school in New Hampshire that was forever teetering between the third and fourth tiers and was unsure if it could survive as an independent law school, and its transfer to the University of New Hampshire. They have risen to the second tier. I think they're ranked about 88 in a space of 8 years. They had some assets going in, They were already the #1 ranked intellectual property law school in the country. And basically what they had from the University of New Hampshire was lower tuition, the ability to recruit a much higher quality student body. And once Dean John Hudson left the law school, there was no holds barred on the influencing process that goes on amongst legal academics when it comes to filling out U.S. News and World Report rankings of your peers.
Thank you.
Dr. Dishner, yes, ma'am.
Just a quick follow-up question to that. Approximately how many law schools have actually transferred, like say in the last 10, 15 years? And generally, are they successful or no?
A little of everything, okay? The only school that we are aware of that has transferred across state lines is Ave Maria Law School, which moved from Michigan to Naples, Florida. They are currently on provisional accreditation, I believe, with the American Bar Association for numerous standards violations in regards to experiential opportunities, placement, and bar pass rates. They moved in about 2008. Pierce is a success story. The one before that was in Detroit, and I'm trying to remember the name of it, that merged with Michigan State and had to move to wherever Michigan State is. Sort of equal, not really a big change. The one before that was Dickinson in Pennsylvania, which merged with the other law school at Penn State, and just recently they have re-separated back out into 2 law schools, believe it or not. I believe those are the Texas Wesleyan, under the auspices of A&M, has also done extremely well, but at great expense to Texas A&M, who, and I can certainly provide more data about that interview if you wanted me to.
Secretary Hargett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the study that MTSU did, their Business Economic Research Center, they talk about northern Alabama and southern Kentucky. Did y'all weigh that in your study?
Not specifically, I think would be the answer.
Okay.
It's if the law school is intended to serve the citizens of Tennessee, we focused very much on Tennessee and Tennesseans. Memphis does serve students over the other side of the river. Knoxville and Lincoln Memorial serve students in the adjacent states. All schools serve students in the adjacent states because they want to improve the profile of their class in order to help increase the bar pass rates.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, sir, you may.
So if I can, on Table 9 and Table 10, I guess it's just Table 9 on page 25 of your report, I was really surprised by the number of out-of-state applications that Tennessee, well, I'm going to consider Vanderbilt an outlier in this, but Tennessee, Memphis, and Belmont, LMU all got, and then to see a very small percentage of those actually become applicants, or not applicants, become enrollees. Can you explain that phenomenon to me?
Not as well as somebody who's in enrollment in law school. I suspect that it comes down to, well, when students apply to law school, they are said to consider 2 things. One, one, reputation.
Right.
And if they aren't going to get into a top 50 law school, 2, the state where they wish to practice. I suspect that a lot of those applications, I have no data for this, but I will put a hypothesis on the table that the many applicants that are from out of state are doing it just in case they get a better offer from a law school in a state where they don't particularly want to practice, but they want to be able to negotiate for a better offer.
Commissioner Winton?
So a couple of times you've alluded to the expense of having a successful law school, and you mentioned that the budget that MTSU proposed is probably not sufficient. So my question is, what would be a sufficient amount, and what did those other schools do that, aside from expenses, to make their law schools successful?
I defer the first question to MTSU, quite frankly. That is to say, what will it take? I mean, I am a former chief financial officer. I could hazard a guess, but I don't think that that's part of my remit. What other schools have done to be successful, it takes money. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It takes money at startup, as Lincoln Memorial has found, as Belmont has found. It takes money, it takes tight expenses. It takes being very selective so that you can immediately get off the ground with a really good reputation. All the things that we do in education, you know. And I'm sorry, that's not a stronger answer.
May I just add to that one of the things we learned from the 2 public law schools that are operating in the state now is that to guarantee the greatest success that they've been able to achieve in their class size over the last couple of years, they have had to ever so slightly lower their LSAT scores. And at the same time, they have invested considerable funds in these academic support services to ensure that those that may come in at that borderline are helped as much as they possibly can to get to that bar passage rate. The ABA criteria that stipulates that 80% of your graduates should pass the bar and only 20% should attrit out is an extremely high standard in American higher education for a school to succeed with. And so the increased funds that the currently operating law schools have added to their budgets, just in that domain alone, is not insignificant.
If I could, I got a question. I did some research at the Bureau of Census Statistics for 2017, and I noted that the national rate of population growth is 0.7% nationwide across the nation. But that for the Nashville, Franklin, Murfreesboro MSA, it's 1.8%. That was the growth from 2016 to 2017. That is approximately 150% greater than the national average. By comparison, and this is information I pulled this morning, the Memphis MSA annual growth was 0.2%, which would be 72% below the national average in terms of growth. Jackson, Tennessee was 0.1%. Johnson City, Tennessee MSA would be 0.4%, and then Kingsport, Bristol was 0.3%. Did you factor at all the population growth and trends in your analysis of your report?
We did not break down, and so far as I know, the data is not yet available to break the projections for the number of attorneys openings due to growth and separation in the state of Tennessee down to a lower level of aggregation, either the Grand 3 divisions or even further down. As time goes by, most states will break those projections down either to a workers' comp region level or some other, whatever their sort of common division is. But to my knowledge, that has not yet been published in the state of Tennessee, so we did not go and invent data there.
Commissioner Stafford?
One of the points that MTSU made in their letter of notification was the value to the Middle Tennessee area specifically, and that most students look to attend a law school within 100 miles of their home or location. I didn't see anything in your report, maybe I missed it, that addressed that. Can you maybe speak to that? You talked about other factors that students take into consideration for selecting a school, but how does that play in?
We did not do any primary market research in this case, so we were unable to validate that assertion that students want to go to school and do go to school within 100 miles of where they live. We do find that is the case with the adult students that we work with in most other academic disciplines. But law school students are, to some extent, unlike other adult students. First off, many of them are going relatively, the average age is 24, so most of them are actually going straight from undergraduate to graduate school. And they're probably more mobile as a result of that. But other than to say that, we do not have any data that either confirms or negates what you just said about the 100 miles.
Yes, ma'am.
So, based on the research you did, and say you were to keep the qualification criteria the same at the other 6 law schools in Tennessee, and MTSU was added to the market as another place for students to attend school, have you looked at the projections of how that would affect attendance at the current law schools, and in addition, the scholarship and out-of-pocket costs for the students attending those schools?
We certainly did not attempt to model or quantify that, if that's what your question is.
Other questions? Okay, if we don't have any further questions, we thank you very much for your presentation. At this point, we've been going for just about an hour and a half. We can take a recess 10 minutes, or we can go right into the stakeholder presentations. That's whatever your preference.
Can we make it 5, because 5 tends to become 10.
That's very good. We are going to recess for 5 minutes. Okay, we're going to come back to order, if you would, please. And what I'd like to do is, we had a little issue with the microphones before, so as a housekeeping matter, we can only have 6 microphones on at one time. So I think just for purposes of going forward, if you're not speaking, if you would just turn your microphone off. So moved. So moved. All right, we're now at the section of our agenda where we're going to hear from the stakeholders. I'd like to call on Dr. Rudd, President of the University of Memphis.
Actually, I was going to let our dean go first.
Great, okay, very good. Dean Shafson.
Good morning, Commissioners, Treasurer Lillard, Comptroller Wilson, Secretary Hargett, and Director Krause. My name is Kate Shafson, and I am the Interim Dean of the University of Memphis Cecil C. Humphrey School of Law. Thank you for considering the timely letter that I sent along with President Rudd, and for allowing me the opportunity to address you this morning. I applaud MTSU's efforts to expand educational opportunities in the state of Tennessee. However, adding a 7th law school in Tennessee is not a responsible allocation of resources. Beginning in 2010, it became apparent that law firms were no longer hiring in the face of the economic downturn. As a result, the number and quality of unique applicants to law schools dropped 36% from 2010 to 2017. One coping strategy adopted widely by law schools was to lower admission standards to maintain class size and revenues. The consequences of this choice would not manifest until those students graduated in 2014. At that time, the national bar passage rates dropped to their lowest in 10 years and continued to fall. As bar passage remained low in subsequent years, the ABA started cracking down on law schools who were admitting unqualified applicants. The ABA has censured several law schools in this time, including Valparaiso. In fact, these pressures have forced the closure of 6 law schools in the past 4 years. During this time, the legal economy moved on, but it did not expand. It's not going to expand again because law firms have learned to be more efficient and to do more with less. In fact, this year, the National Association for Law Placement reported that recent modest growth in the percentage of 2017 graduates finding JD-related employment was not due to an increase in the number of available jobs. Instead, it was attributed to the fact that there were fewer people graduating from law school and seeking those jobs. Without reaching out to the legal community, MTSU's internal feasibility study concluded that there are unfilled legal jobs in Tennessee and will be more in the future. This is overwhelmingly contradicted by myriad publications documenting the contracted legal employment market, and it belies credibility. Notably, not one public comment submitted to THEC suggested an ability to absorb the graduates of a 7th law school in Tennessee. Instead, the contracted legal market was adamantly cited as the reason this commission should reject MTSU's plans. Even the Rutherford and Cannon County Bar Association cautioned that the local bar would have a difficult time absorbing all the graduates into the local job market. As for the rest of the state's ability to absorb the new lawyers, the public comments speak for themselves. In light of the ABA standards and the decrease in the number of qualified applicants, a 7th law school in the state of Tennessee will have to admit students who could readily be served by one of the 6 existing law schools in the state. The University of Memphis and the University of Tennessee already admit every qualified applicant from the state of Tennessee, and we have room to grow. MTSU's letter of notification overlooks this fact, focusing instead on the middle of the state. It cites limitations to some applicants' ability or desire to leave Middle Tennessee. And then it goes on to discount the 3 existing law schools in the middle of the state as somehow not being suitable for Tennessee residents who don't want to leave the middle of the state. Vanderbilt is considered too discerning to admit all qualified Tennessee residents in MTSU's feasibility study. And the Nashville School of Law, which is the most affordable option for Middle Tennessee residents, is discounted because it's not ABA approved. However, the graduates of Nashville College of Law can can be admitted to practice in the state of Tennessee. And if we're talking about people who are unable or unwilling to leave Middle Tennessee, they really have very little need to go and graduate from an ABA accredited law school because they're unlikely to practice outside of the state if they're unwilling to move to go to law school. MTSU's feasibility study also writes off Belmont as a strong option for Middle Tennessee residents because of its relatively high tuition rates. As the consultants pointed out, that fails to consider the very high discount rates of the other law schools in the state, including Belmont. Belmont, in fact, works very hard with its discounting to bring its tuition in line with that charged by the state institutions, Memphis and the University of Tennessee. Belmont must discount its rates to attract qualified applicants. To compete in this region, MTSU would have to do the same thing. And as a state school, it would be at a great disadvantage in doing so in direct competition with Belmont. A law school in Murfreesboro would be at great risk of failure from the start. It would be competing for students and employment in a saturated market. It would face an uphill battle for acquiescence and provisional accreditation by the ABA. In the meantime, the state of Tennessee would invest scarce and limited resources in a law school with an unlikely and an uncertain future, when the Tennessee residents attending the existing public law schools in this state would be better served by investment into those established institutions. On behalf of the University of Memphis School of Law, the taxpayers and lawyers everywhere, I strongly urge you to reject MTSU's letter of notification.
Thank you. Dr. Rudd?
Thank you. I'd like to thank Dean Shafson for her comments and would endorse those comments. I won't repeat what's already been said, the discussion that you've already had, the presentation that you've already seen. I just would emphasize three critical variables and would encourage you that our opposition to the approval is a function of those three variables. One, the lack of student demand. There just simply isn't current student demand. Two, the lack of appropriate career opportunities in terms of employment, post-graduation, and then finally the cost. Not just the cost to establish and to grow the law school, but also I think the unintended costs that would be a consequence for those of us with existing law schools in terms of continuing to compete. I appreciate the opportunity to offer a few comments and would be happy to answer any questions at any point if you have those. Thanks.
Any questions of Dr. Rudd? Thank you. All right, Mr. Mike Sandler.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the commission. Take a good look at me. I'm the failures that the consultants talk about. I'm a practicing attorney here in Nashville. I graduated from the Nashville School of Law in 2014. And I'm everything they say MTSU doesn't deserve a law school for. By the way, I've never been asked by a client which law school I went to. And I don't know of any attorney who ever has been, unless it was hanging on their wall in their office during a meeting. MTSU provides a public option to students who live in the Middle Tennessee area, Northern Alabama, Southern Kentucky. We don't have an option for a law school that's affordable. Vanderbilt's priced out of the market. It was economically unfeasible for me. Belmont was economically unfeasible for me. Vanderbilt in 2017, they had over 4,000 applications and took 204. Belmont had 443 for their 2022 class and only made 278 offers. So the argument that there's excess capacity and that every student that wants to go to law school is being accepted is just false. Now, as far as going to other schools, and UT is a great school, Memphis is a great school. I went to Memphis as an undergrad many years ago. But I will tell you this, folks like myself and folks who are established can't get up and move to Knoxville or Memphis to go to law school. They can't pick up from their families, they can't pick up from their jobs, and they can't go. NSL is a wonderful school. It's over 100 years old, but it serves a nighttime population because all of its students are full-time working students during the day. There's an ABA prohibition against working more than 20 hours a week for a full-time law student, so the only opportunity for law students to work is at night. They do not have that option here in Middle Tennessee. So if you're looking to provide for the citizens of the state, which the taxpayer dollars go to provide public education, I'm asking this commission, if you vote this proposal down, in my opinion, in my humble and very small opinion, you're telling the citizens of Tennessee who pay taxpayer dollars that in Middle Tennessee, those of us who live here, we're second-class citizens and we're not deserving of the same opportunity for education, higher education, specifically law school education, that is afforded in the West Tennessee and East Tennessee. So I ask respectfully that this commission grant the Middle District of Tennessee its opportunity to provide for its citizens who live here. Thank you.
Mr. Ralph Schultz.
Members of the commission, thank you for allowing me to visit with you today. I'm going to bring you some information, and over the weekend we created some economic data that I'll ask to have distributed to you after my remarks. My name is Ralph Schultz. I'm CEO of the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, and our purpose is to create economic prosperity by facilitating community leadership. We are a regional economic development unit. We work with local and county partners to create economic prosperity. And part of the work we do is research, and I'm going to share some of that research with you. But the two things I'd really like to address here is that in Middle Tennessee, we have a spectacular growth economy. We expect that spectacular growth to continue. In fact, we expect the gross product growth was 70.4% between 2007 and 2017, and that was more than double the rate of change in the United States. And because of our ability to model economic performance going forward, we expect to outperform the nation over the next 10 years by 2 to 4% in that annual growth rate. So the GDP is booming in this Middle Tennessee area. Now, the way economic development works these days is that prosperity comes from job growth, and job growth comes from workforce growth and workforce development. The governor has done some great things as a result, or in the workforce category with the Drive to 55, in recognition of the fact that opportunity and financial economic growth and prosperity growth in this Middle Tennessee region comes from the existence of a workforce. I'm not here to speak from the law school out. I'm here to speak from the economy into the law school. And my comments are going to deal with two things, basically, the employee and the employer perspective. First of all, as you will see in the material that I will be providing you, we expect growth, particularly, this is a unique economy in healthcare, music and entertainment, and the expanding IT industry. We expect those jobs to benefit greatly from workforce that has specific legal training. In fact, we are always under the gun from our economic development, both the expansion prospects and the relocation prospects, asking for the population that has legal training within their background. The point here is that not everyone that goes to law school is going to practice law. A lot of people go to law school as sort of an extended MBA program, and businesses hire those people because they have that legal training. From an employee perspective, I'll speak from personal experience. My son-in-law graduated from law school, passed the bar exam on his first try. He lives, and their family live in the state of Tennessee, but in order to go to law school, He had to leave the state of Tennessee, go to the Samuel P. Chase Law School in northern Kentucky. That meant that my daughter, his spouse, had to leave her job in Middle Tennessee, find new employment in northern Kentucky, go through that or have that employment during law school, and then they returned back to Middle Tennessee to establish their family. In that 3-year process, she lost her benefits. She lost her vesting. She lost the investment that she had made in that previous employer over 10 months. The fact of the matter is, the lack of an affordable law school option in Middle Tennessee is harmful to people who want to acquire those legal skills. And many times they have to leave to get those skills. So, what is going to happen in the economy here in the next in the next few years, next 10 years, is that we are going to grow twice as fast as we have grown in the occupational cluster that includes management and finance. Legal degrees are beneficial and helpful to businesses that are expanding in those market segments. We expect 140,000. We have added 140,000 jobs between 2007 and 2017, and we expect that growth to continue for the next 10 years in this region. The population is expected to expand by 1 million people between now and 2035. Having this law school option in this region for that expanding population, for those employers and for those employees, is an urgent need to maintain the prosperity in this community. Key industries that rely extensively on legal services are projected to grow approximately twice as fast as in the Nashville MSA as the U.S. as a whole. I'm going to provide this data to you. We are in very strong support of MTSU's bid for this law school. We believe it creates a very important option for the residents of Middle Tennessee, and it helps us retain workforce and grow our job options and employment in the future. Thank you for the time.
Dean Wilson.
The microphone on? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. I'm Melanie Wilson. I'm the Dean at the University of Tennessee College of Law. Our written comment regarding MTSU's proposal provides historical and relevant data on law schools and legal education in general. In my very brief time with you this morning, I want to focus on 3 points related to our comment and answer any questions that you may have for me. And as an initial matter, I do also want to say that while I had not seen the consultant's report this morning, as Dean of the Law School, it is consistent with my own observations and experiences with regard to legal education. So my first point, I want to talk about the qualified law students in Tennessee. Qualified, not all, but qualified law students in Tennessee already have a choice of 6 diverse law schools spread across the state's 3 grand divisions, including 3 law schools right in Middle Tennessee and then 2 public law schools within an easy drive. At UT Law, we also have a strong presence already in Middle Tennessee with the semester in residence program, with our career services professional who resides here in Nashville and works solely in the Middle Tennessee area. And many of our students come from here, and many of our graduates return to here for their job opportunities. Nevertheless, since 2008 recession, law schools across the country have faced declining interest from prospective students. Exhibit C in our comment shows a drop from over 100,000 applicants in 2004 to just over 56,000 in 2017, a 44% decline in people's interest in going to law school. Exhibit C also shows that the applicants from Tennessee who applied to any law school in the entire country have declined every year since 2011, from a high of just over 1,100 to barely over 800 in 2017. The point is, if you are a student with the aptitude and to become an able and ethical lawyer in Tennessee and pass the bar exam, there are law schools right here, including public law schools in Tennessee where you can study and where you can succeed. Adding a 7th law school will increase the pressure on existing schools to lower their admission standards. And lowering admission standards means that more students will enter law school, take on significant debt without a real likelihood of passing the bar or ever practicing law. Memphis, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt have resisted these pressures, but have been forced to reduce the entering class size to do so. These same pressures explain why several law schools across the country have closed in the past year, including schools in cities the size of Charlotte, North Carolina, and Savannah, Georgia, and it explains the history and the experience of Valparaiso. Turning to my second point, the job market for law graduates is very challenging. Adding another law school will only dilute further the chances of graduates from Tennessee's 6 current law schools from finding employment as a lawyer. MTSU's feasibility study itself notes the uncertainty of the future job market for lawyers and acknowledges that the job market will remain a very tough one. And the job market historical data bears that out. You've seen in the consultant's report today some of those numbers, and so I won't try to repeat those here. But I think the letters in the record bear this out. There's a letter in the record from a recent graduate, Joy Baxter, and then there are 2 letters from 2 big firm hiring partners, and I think they explain this employment trend very well. One of the hiring partners, Buck Lewis, former chair of the ABA Standing Committee on Pro Bono and Public Service, says that his firm, Baker Donaldson, continues to receive, quote unquote, scores of applications for every position. And perhaps the most important letter of all is the one from Ms. Baxter, an exceptional 2017 graduate of our college who earned a spot in the top 10% of her class and who is really remarkable, but she faced difficulty finding a bar-required law job upon graduation. My third and final point is this: issues of access. There have been discussion about that. The University of Tennessee graduates a number of students who go into public service work every year. Our students indeed provide over 10,000 hours of pro bono service every year to the citizens of Tennessee, to other states, including serving veterans. So any suggestion that Tennessee or Memphis or the other law schools already in the state are not fully engaged in work enabling access to justice is inaccurate. Likewise, adding another law school legal clinic in the state is unlikely to significantly increase the legal services to those who need a lawyer but cannot afford one. While law school clinics are incredibly valuable, they are equally expensive because they're designed to educate students, not to serve large numbers of clients like legal aid might do. So, in conclusion, we at Tennessee welcome an opportunity to collaborate with MTSU, Tennessee State, other colleges and universities across Tennessee to ensure that every single qualified applicant has a place to go to law school. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, though not on the agenda, we've received a request from Dr. Glover to speak, and certainly our staff position is if a sitting president wants to speak to this commission, we should always grant that.
I concur. Dr. Glover?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today. I'm here to express my views on Middle Tennessee State University's proposal to establish an ABA-accredited law school in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and I express my support. I recognize the Commission's critically important role in evaluating and approving new academic programs. I also respect the position of those who have voiced their opposition for and against the law school. As you know, Tennessee State University is the only public Carnegie doctoral research university located in Nashville. TSU serves students, scholars, and business leaders from around the globe. With dual designations as a historically black university as well as a land-grant university, our student body represents the rich cultural diversity of our vibrant society, and we as a university are dedicated to preparing our graduates for meaningful careers as productive citizens in this global marketplace. I have spoken to President McPhee about his efforts to move the Valparaiso University Law School to the MTSU campus. In the interest of full transparency, I have conveyed to him TSU's interest in establishing a law school at TSU sometime in the future. However, I understand that TSU is not ready yet to pursue this significant endeavor. Irrespective, though, of TSU's future plans regarding a law school, I am committed to providing more opportunities for individuals from underserved and underrepresented communities, including TSU graduates, to pursue a career in the legal profession. With no law school at TSU at this time, the presence of a law school in Murfreesboro will offer TSU students and other students from underrepresented communities a greater opportunity to realize their dream of becoming a lawyer and graduate from a public accredited law school located in the Middle Tennessee region. In fact, this is a perfect example of an opportunity for universities in the Middle Tennessee region to work together for the benefit of our students in this region. Having a law school at MTSU will stimulate this spirit of collaboration, at least it should. As for TSU and MTSU have already begun discussions about the development of an early admission program for qualified TSU students. This program will allow students to earn their bachelor's degree and law degree in 6 years, reducing the time and debt they would incur in their studies. I also envision an opportunity to enroll more high-ability high school and community college students and increase our rates of persistence and degree completion as our students see real opportunity to continue to law school and to increase collaborations between our TSU faculty and faculty members of the law school. I recognize that some individuals and groups have registered opposition to having a law school at MTSU, citing the existence of 3 law schools in Nashville in support of their opposition. As a lawyer myself, I attended Georgetown, and also a CPA who has studied this phenomenon. I have tremendous respect for the law schools located in Nashville. However, the presence of these schools in Nashville does not diminish the educational diversity-related opportunities, as I mentioned above. The opportunities associated with having a public accredited law school in Murfreesboro. I would also add that Vanderbilt University Law School, a nationally ranked private institution, has not been a realistic option for many TSU students or students from other underserved, underrepresented communities. And Vanderbilt has not admitted a TSU graduate in the last 10 years, at least. Belmont University, a private institution, represents potential cost-related barriers for TSU students and others who wish to attend that proud institution. Nashville School of Law exists to meet the unique needs of a smaller segment of individuals in the Nashville area, and because it is still in the process of becoming an ABA accredited law school, it represents financial and other challenges for some students. As the population of the Nashville metropolitan area continues its rapid growth, the lack of access to operating affordable legal education will continue to perpetuate this disparity of access to legal education. I encourage you to resist any territorial-based arguments that have been made or will be made in opposition to MTSU's proposal and focus on whether the presence of a public law school in Murfreesboro, a key city in Middle Tennessee region, and would be a transformational opportunity, whether it would benefit graduates of the state of Tennessee's great universities and increase opportunities to expand the diversity of the legal profession in this region and throughout this great state. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Yes, sir. Comptroller Wilson.
Yes, Madam President.
Yes, sir.
I want this on the record to be sure I understand correctly. The Geyer case came about in large part because of the University of Tennessee desire to have a law school in Nashville. Do you support the application of MTSU?
I do.
You do, and this is not, and this as far as the MTSU, as far as TSU is concerned, this is not a basis to object on the Geyer case.
No, because at some point TSU will submit an application for a law school. We're just not ready to do it at this point.
But you do not view this as an impediment to your submitting an application at a later point?
I don't.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thanks very much. Any other questions for Dr. Glover? Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. McPhee.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, ladies and gentlemen, I think it is still good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss the very compelling need for a public, accredited law school to serve Nashville and Middle Tennessee area. Mr. Chairman, please allow me to introduce members of our Board of Trustees who are present here today. With your permission?
Yes, sir.
First, we have our Vice Chairman, Darrell Freeman. We have Trustee Pete DeLay and Trustee J.B. Baker and Rutherford County Mayor, former Senator, graduate of MTSU, Bill Ketron. Now, before I begin, however, I would like, Mr. Chairman, to comment on THEC's consultant report, which we just received very late Friday evening. Unfortunately, that report is replete with inaccuracies, unsubstantiated speculation, conjecture, and other significant errors. I had not originally planned to discuss the consultant's report this morning, but after reading it this weekend, I must do so, since it fails miserably to present a balanced and fair assessment of our proposal. The title of the report, quote, "A seventh law school for Tennessee," end of quote. That's on the report here. Suggests to me that from the beginning, the consultants attempted to answer the wrong question. The question at hand is really whether Middle Tennessee needs its first public accredited law school, not whether the state overall needs a seventh. This is a vital distinction. In my humble opinion, Mr. Chairman, members of this commission, this feasibility study is not a feasibility study. In fact, a few of my staff refer to it as a hatchet job. It does not appear to be very much objective analysis and evaluation, but rather a prejudged statement with every possible reason this gift will not work. Now, it is one thing to give a pro and con views in a study, but to give absolutely negative views is wrong. As you read the study, there isn't a single positive thing in this study about MTSU, a great institution, an institution that provides for this community every year 5,000 graduates. Now, I know our consultant was not the first consultant that THEC engaged to do the feasibility study, and they had a shortened time frame within to complete their work. But the compressed time available to them perhaps explain some of the methodological problems in this study. But this does not excuse the report many errors, which lead and has led to inappropriate, incomplete, and misleading findings and recommendations. Some of these errors are using outdated statistics, misinterpreting existing research, selecting an underrepresentative sample of interviewees, accepting without question the claims made by those anonymous interviewees, failing to account for the many differences between public and private law schools, frequently using the language of speculation, may or could, treating anecdotes as facts, and failing to recognize that Middle Tennessee has students' demand and job opportunities that are different from the rest of the state. In addition, the report ignores the geographic realities for where place-bound adults attend law school. And it plays down the fact that Nashville School of Law is not an ABA-accredited institution. Misunderstands the opportunities for experiential legal education in Middle Tennessee. Assume incorrectly that MTSU will not systematically seek to educate lawyers to serve both rural and urban clients. And it dismisses our careful due diligence about the finances associated. I did not receive one question from the consultant about our budget or our finances. Not one. We have been fiscally sound and academically responsible. The obvious flaw I mentioned, many more are not, I'm not citing primarily because of time. These flaws and these errors, in my humble opinion, rendered this document virtually worthless as an assessment of the needs of an accredited public law school in Middle Tennessee. I urge you to disregard the flaws, this flawed and biased, which seems to be written from the perspective of potential threats to the positions of existing law schools and to the income of the state's existing lawyers. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, we reject the cartel-like view that the existing 2 public law schools, you're responsible for 2, not 7. This state has 2 public law schools that you have responsibility for. So the cartel-like view that existing 2 public accredited law schools should be guaranteed market share, no matter what the market really wants. This report is not written from the position of what's best for all Tennesseans for the state's economy. Now, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I would like to begin my brief presentation about this great opportunity that is available to us. First, why a law school in Middle Tennessee? Middle Tennessee is the 7th fastest growing metropolitan area in the United States with over 3 million residents. There is no public law school anywhere in the region between Memphis, Louisville, Kentucky, Knoxville, and Tuscaloosa, Alabama. In fact, the residents of Middle Tennessee are farther from a public law school than any resident in the 50 states' largest metropolitan areas in America. Think about that for just a minute. 3 million residents in the most diverse part of the state, with another million people projected in the next decade, and no convenient access to a public legal education? This opportunity will provide particularly economically disadvantaged access to an accredited public law institution to all those persons who cannot afford a private law school and who are place-bound or who cannot afford to move, and you've heard examples of that, to one or the other end of the state. The consultants and other opposition tell us that Nashville already has 2 ABA-accredited law schools. So MTSU doesn't need one. They conveniently fail to tell you that last year, Vanderbilt admitted 6 graduates from Tennessee, from this state, 6. And 4 of those 6 were their own students. They also fail to tell you that the cost of education at Vanderbilt is over $85,000 per year, and at Belmont is over $70,000 annually, the cost of education. A law school at MTSU will assure that every qualified resident of this region, including adult students, persons with families, members of diverse ethnic and racial groups, and persons who moving to another region of a state is not economically possible, will have access to an accredited legal education. So how does the state of Tennessee assure equal access? You have the opportunity to receive a fully accredited operational law school with a 139-year history. As Tennessee, and particularly the region, continues to grow in population and to draw businesses and industry, we will be, as you've heard from the president of the Nashville Chamber of Commerce, we will need access. There is a significant cost, members of this commission, to putting this decision off. There's also a significant savings to the state of accepting a gift, which is the transfer of an existing, and I underline, accredited law school over creating down the road a school from scratch and seeking costly initial accreditation. This, ladies and gentlemen, members of the commission, is a once in a generation opportunity that may never come again to this state. If you don't believe me, I'll tell you a little story in a moment. But why MTSU? The mission of MTSU, as you have designated, as a comprehensive institution with select master's and doctoral program. You've also recognized, and others around the country, including THEC, has recognized MTSU for its signature experiential learning and integrated learning experiences. Twice in the last 10 years, we've had that recognition by the Southern Association of Colleges. Because we are located in the geographic center of the state, our mission is focused on meeting the needs of the Middle Tennessee region, critical part of our mission. We align with the state's goal, educational attainment levels of Tennesseans. We align with the state's goal with economic growth. And certainly, we align providing access through educational resources. We have the facility. In 2013, a very generous donor, an alum, donated $10 million to this university, and we used those funds to acquire Middle Tennessee Medical Center property in Murfreesboro. The existing facility has over 100,000 square feet of space, and it has the capacity to house the entire law school, including classrooms, the law library, and all the necessary student support services. The Miller Education Center already has an existing capacity to accommodate an entering class in 2019, while the remainder of the facility is renovated for future years of growth. We are the second largest university in Tennessee with 124 academic programs, including 9 doctoral programs and nearly over 1,000 faculty members, and a budget of $440 million. We're no longer that small little middle. We are a comprehensive, a major comprehensive university. And we are an organization with the resources to successfully operate an accredited law school. We are not requesting financial support from the state to assume and transfer this law school. Now, you heard a lot about Valparaiso. Let me share some facts. Valparaiso is a selective private institution in Northwest Indiana and has determined that the operation of the law school is no longer in its strategic best interest. The geographic location of the law school, a little more than an hour outside of Chicago, places it as a significant disadvantage to 5 other publicly highly private institutions that located within the city. Valparaiso Board of Directors voted not to sell the school, but to give it to the state and to this university as a gift in order to see it continues its heritage of enrolling a diverse community of students who value inclusiveness in its many forms. This transfer includes the transfer of intellectual property as well as the entire asset of their law library. The transfer means that we have the opportunity to move in an existing accredited law school to Middle Tennessee. It is an established law school with a very long history, having produced over 8,000 graduates since its first opened in 1879. Supreme Court justices have taught at Valparaiso University Law School. It has a commitment to imparting knowledge, technical, practical skills, and modeling the commitment to law as a calling. It is recognized nationally, ladies and gentlemen, for its experiential learning and practical learning. And we believe that these values match our values of commitment to student success, our emphasis on experiential and applied learning and service. The law school has a very unique curriculum and structure that is not available at either of the 2 public law schools in the state of Tennessee. And while all ABA accredited law schools address basically the same topics in the initial year, Valparaiso does so in 7 weeks session to expedite assessment and feedback of students engaged in live client contact beginning in the very first semester of the law school. And as recently as last year, that law school was recognized as being one of the top 20 most innovative law schools in the United States. National Jurist magazine gave the Valparaiso Law School an A+ in 2017, and this spring it was ranked number 7 in the country for practical training. Clearly, these are not characteristics of a failing law school. It is a historic, respected, accredited law school that sees its transfer to move to MTSU as the opportunity to begin a new chapter in its storied history. The law school is fully accredited by the American Bar Association, and it is conditioned, I might underline, that accreditation is conditioned of our agreement for this transfer to be successful and for us to accept it. This is particularly significant financial savings to the costs that would be incurred if accreditation had to be newly sought. The law school, Valparaiso Law School, is fully accredited and has been continuously accredited since 1929, making it the 38th oldest accredited law school in the country. And contrary to what some would have you believe, the law school has never lost its accreditation. In November 2016, it received a censure from the ABA because it failed to adhere to 2 sections of the ABA accreditation standards related to student admissions. But by the following year, the censure was lifted because they had corrected the issue. Also, contrary to what some opposition has claimed, the ABA can continue accreditation during and after a transfer of control or a law school to another university. It has a process in place to do just that, and we have worked with the ABA and with Valparaiso University to do just that. The law school, as the current home of the law school, we have already submitted with Valparaiso a draft request of acquiescence. So the gift. I need to be clear. This is not a purchase. Valparaiso University is not interested in selling its law school, and MTSU is not interested in buying a law school. This is a gift to the state of Tennessee, Mr. Chairman, members of this committee, that is worth millions of dollars to this state. This is one of those rare opportunities where two institutions can collaborate to continue an accredited academic program with a very long history and heritage by moving it to a geographical location in which it can thrive. As I stated previously, we just did not decide we wanted to have a law school. We began discussions about over a year ago with Valparaiso. In fact, they looked at 3 institutions across the country. They did their due diligence, and after about a year of that review, they selected MTSU. Senior staffs, both from Valparaiso and MTSU, have met numerous times with each other. We've met with staff of the accrediting bodies. We've met with staff with the U.S. Department of Education. We met with staff of the ABA and with THEC staff, as you heard from the director. In short, we conducted a detailed analysis of the school's current and historical cost of operation, tuition and fee structure, and revenues, and the status of their accreditation, as well as transferability. Now, we recognize that this understanding is not without cost, but they are well within our fiscal capacity at MTSU. We will have capital construction expenses for renovation of the Miller Education Center to make it a permanent home of the College of Law, but it is a shell, and we would have to make some changes and add some expenses for renovation. We base our projected operating budget and expenses on detailed analysis of the law school's current budget. We have all the faculty salaries. We've got all of the information that we very clearly analyzed. The expenses will be covered initially by a combination of tuition and fees and the reallocation of existing resources that will not damage or hurt any other academic program on our campus, which is a common practice for many of the programs that are brought before you from our other sister institutions. Eventually, the expenses of the program will be covered by a combination of tuition and fees, reallocation of existing resources, and new funding through the formula-based funding formula. Let me repeat that we conducted a detailed analysis of both the projected costs and the projected revenues, and we are confident in that analysis. We will not come back to you with a request for additional funds to support the law school. In fact, we have already received inquiries from individual supporters and donors of our university who are interested in establishing scholarship and an endowment to support the law school should you approve it. Now, just a word on the effect of the funding, because I've heard that this law school will take money away from other institutions within the state. As we all know, there are 9 metrics used in the funding formula for universities. And most of these focus on retention, progression, degree, production, and graduation rates. The initial enrollment of students to the law school will have no effect on the funding formula because of the metrics. These students will be in a graduate program, degree program, and graduate degree programs are not factored into the retention, progression, or 6-year graduation metrics. But as with any other program that you have approved, and you approved many from all of the institutions, as with any other, the students that we recruit and they recruit and graduate and retain, they will factor into the degree production metrics, starting with our first graduating class in spring of 2022. Some misconceptions and accuracies. The number of applicants to law school is declining. Not true. Applicants at every law school in Tennessee are up, including UT, where they are up 64% since 2014, and the University of Memphis, where they are up 15% this year, following a 16% increase between 2015 and 2017. These are not my numbers that I've made up. Enrollment in law school is down. Not true. The University of Tennessee just reported the largest entering, I saw your magazine, the largest entering class in the past 5 years. And Memphis increased its enrollment by 23% compared to last year. The law school will be unable to transfer its ABA accreditation to MTSU. Not true, as I have already explained. The market for lawyers is saturated, and changes to the legal profession have stalled employment opportunities for graduates with a JD degree. Not true. The most recent census data shows unemployment rate for lawyers in Nashville, 1.28%. You've heard this. And the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics project a national growth of 8% and a Tennessee growth of 12%. Establishing a new law school would result in duplication or undue proliferation of law programs in the state because half of the Tennessee law schools are in Nashville. Now, that is true, but that's misleading. 2 accredited law schools at Nashville, as you all know, are private, and they are highly selective, and they are expensive. And the third is an unaccredited and only enrolled part-time students in the night program. So, Mr. Chairman, members of this committee, our intent is to explore some areas of specialization. This allows us to be innovative, it allows us the creativity, and it allows us the ability to focus on the needs of our state. And some of the areas we're looking at specializing in, including intellectual property, sports and entertainment law, healthcare, and legal clinics for veterans. We have a very large veteran population at MTSU and other state universities and in our region. And as you heard from President Glover of TSU, we will explore the TSU Collaborative 3+3 program to attract high-ability TSU students who will spend 3 years at TSU, 3 years at MTSU Law School for a joint degree. These are just few of the, what I would call, outside of the box thinking that MTSU will employ. Now a little bit of history for you as I wrap up. I told you a few minutes ago that I would tell you a little story, so allow me to do that now. In 1961, Cumberland University in Lebanon decided that it no longer can afford its private ABA accredited law school and that it was not in their strategic best interest to continue to operate it. Does that sound familiar? So they approached the state of Tennessee with an offer to sell their law school and all of its assets, including the law library. Memphis State University at that time wanted it desperately. I have the evidence. These are the actual newspaper reporting and clippings from 1961, the Tennessean report and the Knoxville Sentinel. The University of Tennessee did not want the competition and worked hard to prevent the sale to the state and its transfer to Memphis. In 1961, the claim was made that Tennessee already had 2 accredited law schools and did not need any more. I refer you to the article. In 1961, the claim was made that the existing law school had extra capacity already. We've heard that. In 1961, the claim was made that the state already had enough lawyers. This is 1961. And in 1961, the claim was made that the state could not afford another additional law school, and it would take needed funds away from existing programs. 1961, members of the commission. In the end, the process was sufficiently delayed by opponents that Cumberland University sold the law school to a school in Birmingham, Alabama, and is known today as the Cumberland School of Law at Samford University. There's more. 1 year later, 1962, your predecessors responsible for higher education agreed that there was indeed sufficient need for another law school, and they approved the creation from scratch of a law school for Memphis State University. So you have heard it said that history tends to repeat itself. And here we are again with a similar opportunity and faced with the same resistance. Although this time, interesting, we have the recipient of the second public law school in 1962 now joining the University of Tennessee that they fought 60 years ago to try to prevent a third public law school. Members of the commission, the population of this state has grown by over 3 million people since the law school in Memphis was established. The largest number of those new residents are in the Middle Grand Division of the state. Yet, we still only have 2 law schools located on 2 opposite ends of the state. It is long past, commission members, Mr. Chairman, to serve those residents in the Middle Tennessee region. So I close. I would like to read just a brief portion as I wrap up of a letter from Speaker Beth Howell in support of this law school here. And I quote, "As Speaker of the Tennessee House of Representatives, I am continually reminded of the geographical, the cultural, the legal, and economic distinction of the 3 grand divisions of Tennessee that are defined in state law," and it gives the reference. "In addition to the many symbols of these distinctive divisions, example, 3 stars on the state flag, we have long recognized the need to ensure equity for our citizens. For example, our Constitution mandates that no more than 2 of our Supreme Court justices be from any one division, and state law requires a particular number of appellate judges to be from each of the 3 grand divisions. Since I was first elected to the legislature in 1988, I have worked hard to represent the interests and the values of all Tennesseans, as well as the specific needs of my constituents in the 56th District. As the Tennessee Higher Education Commission works to meet its legislatively mandated responsibility to fill student demand, employer need, and societal requirements, the value of placing a public law school in the most popular and most culturally diverse and the fastest growing region of the state cannot be overstated. This law school will provide access to affordable legal education for individuals who are place-bound and unable to relocate to Memphis or Knoxville, or who cannot afford the cost of an elite private school. While many of the graduates of this law school chooses to pursue opportunities in private practice, large numbers will also be employed in many of the business and industries that are relocating to Tennessee. You've heard that again from the president of the chamber. Finally, an accredited public law school, this is still the speaker, I'm quoting, an accredited public law school will also provide a critical resource to members of the legal community and to the public as we seek to ensure equal access to justice for residents of the Middle Tennessee region. End of quote. So, members of this commission, Mr. Chairman, in short, I want to assure you all that this has been, for MTSU, a very deliberate undertaking, and one that I feel, as its president for 18 years, confident that both academically and fiscally that this proposal is sound. So I respectfully ask that you approve the letter of notification for the MTSU Doctor of Jurisprudence. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to hear my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. McPhee. At this point, we can take questions for Dr. McPhee, or we can recess for 5 minutes if anyone needs to get to the restroom. What's the pleasure? Okay, we're going to press on. Questions for Dr. McPhee. Anyone want to be recognized? Mayor Wharton?
Good morning, President McPhee. With respect to the faculty, do you have anything you could relate to us with respect to how many members of the existing faculty have indicated that they would look favorably upon transferring to Murfreesboro?
Yes, sir, we do. There was a survey done by Valparaiso along with us, the faculty. At least, and this was several months ago, 2/3 of the faculty expressed interest in transferring to our university. I might also add that as we visit with the ABA, one of the conditions and requirements for the continuation of accreditation obviously is that we accept the curriculum as is. We can change it later, but we also have to have, as we start up, a faculty that is prepared to offer. And so that allows us the opportunity to run the program. So to your question, yes, sir, we have.
One follow-up.
Yes, sir.
Follow-up question on that. I believe the draft of the collaboration agreement requires MTSU to maintain transferring faculty members at their
current
present salary for at least 1 year. Is that correct?
That's correct, and we have factored that in our pro forma.
And does that in any way impact your existing salaries and your other schools? Would it cause any appearance of inequity or unfairness if those salaries are?
That's an excellent question, and we've looked at that. The salaries, we've looked at every salary of a faculty member, and it's very much consistent with what we pay our faculty member at the senior level in accounting and other business areas. So it will not create any disparity from our budget and from our current faculty.
Thank you.
Commissioner Coben, did you? Okay.
President McPhee, thank you so much for being here today and making your presentation. I want you to know that I served on your faculty in your School of Business a number of years ago. I was a part-time student at MTSU. I have dear friends on your board of trustees. And I was fortunate enough that 2 of those took me on a tour of MTSU last Thursday morning, and I got to see the Miller Education Center. It's a beautiful facility. The word deserve has been bantered around here this morning, and I think it's important to say this hearing is nothing about whether or not MTSU deserves a law school. MTSU is a jewel of higher education in the public sector in Middle Tennessee, and I am very proud to have been affiliated with you all. You have increased your enrollment drastically over the last 10 years. You have some very innovative majors. Your construction industrial management major is like one of 4 in the country.
That's correct.
Your recording industry major was named one of the preeminent music programs in the country.
Yes,
You've
ma'am.
done some marvelous things, and we are very proud of you. And our consideration of your proposal is, in my mind, we are charged with safeguarding the excellence that you have created in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, as well as safeguarding public education in the state of Tennessee. So having said that, I have some very grave concerns. I really want to approve this proposal, but I have to have some questions answered that would pertain to your own feasibility study that you provided us with and dovetail with what our consultants have provided us with. So to that end, and back on faculty salary and benefits, you've guaranteed the continuation of Valparaiso Law School faculty salaries for 1 year. I notice in your financial projections, you do not change that salary figure for the full 7 years. Would you not have to factor in an increase there?
Yes, and we were actually quite conservative, and my vice president for business and finance, who worked on this with the Valparaiso, with your permission, I would like for him to respond to that.
Is there any objection? Okay, go right ahead. And sir, if you would please state your name when you get to the lectern.
Yes, Alan Thomas, CFO for MTSU. If you look at that pro forma, we were conservative on the revenue side as well. We did not project any as far as increases in the tuition rates as we went along too, thinking that if we were conservative on our in that as well as our enrollments, we think the enrollments will be larger than what they are. So the expenses, we left those the same just to try to, not have those disparities along the way instead of trying to show a mixed bag on both sides.
And I would also say your tuition is competitive with UT Knoxville and University of Memphis. However, they are severely discounting that tuition with scholarships, but you don't factor scholarships into this.
We do in our operating expenses. There are scholarships built into those operating expenses as well.
I have another question for
Yes, ma'am.
President McPhee, if I could.
Financial. Yes.
Sir? Yes, sir.
Thomas is here.
You okay?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Couple of questions. You prepared your financials before you saw the outside consultants' analysis.
Yes, correct. Yes, we've worked on
And
these.
they're somewhat different.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that?
We've worked on our financials for several months using, when these negotiations began. Ours began with analyzing the salary. I'll start with the salaries and benefits that are factual, current salaries being paid to the faculty at Valparaiso. They're based on the current benefits that are available to MTSU and state employees today, in the state, and that we pay today, that we know are known benefits. It's based on operating expenses of our academic departments that we have on campus today and probably a little larger than we are because it is a startup program. Now, is everything perfect? No. But I doubt there's one academic program that came forward that we didn't have a small thing that we didn't think about in the very beginning for a startup program like this. But we have factored those things in based on known facts of, the library being the largest, probably one of the largest expenses of a law program. Those were gone through with our current library system that we have on campus to make sure there wasn't duplication, to make sure we had existing resources to support that, and then making sure that we could add on those resources that we would need with bringing on this program.
When the Board of Trust of MTSU met, I guess last Wednesday, were you present when the finances were discussed?
Yes, sir.
And was there a full discussion of the finances at that point?
Yes, sir. We have had discussions along the way of all of this with our trustees.
We'll return to Commissioner Coben.
President McPhee.
Yes, ma'am.
If I understand correctly, after today, you would also have to have approvals from the Association of American Law Schools, the Tennessee Supreme Court Board of Law Examiners, and the Tennessee Legislature. Have you touched base thus far with any of those bodies?
Yes, actually, we have a meeting scheduled, Ms. Edgar, in November with several of those organizations.
And the ABA can approve only at its quarterly meetings. Are you on the docket for their November or their February meeting?
February, and we've had ongoing significant conversation with the ABA along with our partner Valparaiso with regards to the need to have this be brought before the ABA in February.
And if it goes before the legislature and the ABA in February, what does that do to your timetable for recruiting qualified students?
Actually being very optimistic, and the conversations, while the ABA staff did not guarantee, the letter of acquiescence that has gone through, they have told us that we are able to, once we get approval from this body, to begin the recruitment process. And anticipating, I'm an optimist, that you all would approve this, we begin some behind-the-scene work with Valparaiso with regards to the recruiting of the class for 2019. And I might add that part of the urgency is the ABA told us that they would look favorably on either providing provisional or full accreditation if we get a class up in 2019, which means that this fall is an important time for us to do some significant recruiting.
Could I ask one more question?
You may ask anything
please?
you'd like.
And then I'll let some other people ask questions. There are 3 places in your feasibility study, President McPhee, where you actually mentioned that it is not a problem of students getting into law school so much as it is a problem of not having employment for those students once they get out. 3 places. In fact, one place it indicates that for every 1,000 lawyers in the state of Tennessee, there will be 10.41 openings for an attorney. I don't want to just educate students in law. I want them to be able to be gainfully employed. And actually, opening a brand new law school in Middle Tennessee to train people to not go into law bothers me a little bit. Can you talk to us about that, please?
Yes, let me clarify. We're not saying we are starting this law school to train people not to go into law. It's almost a catch-22, because you hear the opposition say, well, we have too many lawyers in practicing, as that there are no other opportunities for those who have legal education. One of the reasons I asked the president of the chamber to come and bring some statistics about this region is so that you can hear from him, not me, about the availability for this area. And I think some of the data that he presented really showed that the potential and the growth need in the Middle Tennessee area.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dishner.
Dr. McPhee,
Yes,
again,
ma'am.
thank you very much for taking the time to listen to our questions and respond. In light of the accreditation issue too, would you just talk through the SACS COC process for us and how that will work as well?
Yes, that's an excellent question, and I'm going to throw a lifeline because he's been working on this with your permission, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Peter Cunningham, who's been our lead person on the accreditation and SACS.
If there's no objection, thank you.
Members of the Commission, I'm Peter Cunningham. I'm the Vice Provost for Academic Programs. And as President said, we've been juggling a number of regulatory and approving bodies throughout this process. Let me just expand a little bit on your question. The Valparaiso University is accredited by the Higher Learning Commission, used to be the North Central. They have to work with that group as they transition out and phase out the law school. We have to work with the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges, what we refer to as SACS-COC, on a substantive change to our curriculum. And so we have already submitted our initial notification to them by their deadline back in September that we would be submitting the substantive change request to them. We have submitted that. It's of importance to us that you all act today so that we can then submit the documentation that shows that this has actually occurred, that our regulatory body in the state has approved. But we work with SACS-COC in addition to Valparaiso working with HLC, both institutions working with the ABA, and it's Valparaiso University as the home of the law school right now that actually submits the acquiescence request to the ABA, and they already have the draft acquiescence request and are reviewing it now. So we think we're on time, we're on schedule. The educational collaboration agreement that you have before you as part of our packet makes clear that the transfer of the law school, our acceptance of this law school, is conditional upon the ABA continuing its accreditation, SACS-COC approving this. We've even talked with members of the U.S. Department of Education to ensure that federal financial aid is available to students at both locations through the transition. It's really been a bit of a complicated thing to deal with, but we're on top of every one of those issues.
Commissioner Winton.
So I'll go back to my financial question that I asked earlier today. And one of the reasons why I'm asking the question is because as a student, there are a lot of things that you need when you are at law school. As someone who went to law school, there are things that you, I wouldn't say, because I went to University of Memphis before it became in the nice building. So there were lots of things that you needed to be there. And there's nothing in this budget that talks about the student and their experience that they're going to have in the law school. And when you're thinking about millennials and this new generation, those are things that they're going to have in order to make your law school something that they want to go to. So without seeing that, I'm just trying to figure out where does that
Where is it
sit?
located? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, and that's a great question. One of the things we are known for at MTSU is our support for student success. In fact, we were ranked the top 5 by the Association of Higher Education a few years ago because of our Student Success Initiative. We have an office that we have funded that has been very successful as we provide support not only for undergraduate students or graduate students. The resources that would be directed to our law school will come from that budget. We know that there will be a need for extra classes, for tutoring, for support. So that is factored in. And what we, as my VP said, we try to anticipate everything as we put the performer together, and not everything is reflected in the budget that we've given you. We just try to focus on those major items. But let me assure you that we have factored those support services in.
Comptroller Wilson.
This, you know, when I went to law school, Valparaiso, that was 50 years ago, Valparaiso was considered one of the best law schools in the country. It was really a fine one. But I saw in the outside consultants report some figures that are a little concerning. The bar pass rates, the LSAT rates, and anecdotally what I've heard from lawyers in Indiana in the last few months. I realize that the student body that you'll recruit from will be different, but you will have substantially the same faculty. And I have some question whether or not that meets the standards that MTSU has for its other programs. Could you comment on that?
Yes, and there were a lot of conversations and presentation earlier about Valparaiso as though the law school is going to stay in Valparaiso. It will, once it transfers to MTSU, it'll become the College of Law at MTSU. We have a reputation for funding and supporting and attracting top-notch students and faculty. And I see this program being no different, Mr. Commissioner, with respect to our tradition and our emphasis on making sure that we have excellent academic program, highly qualified faculty, and also the success of those students. And so that is an area, I don't have the data in front of me, but I think the last year of the admissions LSAT was about the same as, is that right, Peter? And so they've shown some progress in the last couple of years.
Commissioner Stafford and then Commissioner Roach.
Dr. McPhee, good afternoon. Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the work that your team has put together in putting this proposal before us. I apologize for my question because it's not on point, but I'm curious. In the industry that I spend most of my time in, financial services industry, we have a saying that banks are sold and not bought. And you've talked about the fact that you were not interested in buying Valparaiso, and this is not a sale of that school, but it's a gift. But I'm curious, given that there's a lot of conversation about the number of schools in the state of Tennessee today, given the performance of some of the schools, specifically Nashville School of Law, has there ever been any conversation about an agreement or working with National School of Law to either acquire it or to, in some way, form a partnership for Middle Tennessee?
Yeah, that's a bum of a question. We have not, let me make it very clear, we have not had any formal discussion with the Nashville School of Law about either collaborating, merging. Obviously, as we work with TSU, we are open, and the governor and THEC has really encouraged institutions to do some cross-collaboration. So I see that as a possibility, and frankly, been around in higher education for these number of years, anything is possible.
Commissioner Roach.
Is this on? Dr. McPhee, you may think this is another bum of a question, but when you and I talked on the phone and when I talked to one of your colleagues on the phone, I mentioned that as a member of THEC, our job is to look at what is in the best interest of the entire state. And we are appointed from congressional districts, but we aren't to represent just those districts. We're here to represent the entire state of Tennessee. So what's probably unfair here is I'm going to ask you to take your MTSU hat off and put our THEC hat on and tell us why, from that perspective, this should be approved.
That's an excellent question. And having been president for 18 years at MTSU, it's difficult for me to flip hats, but I will, as you request. As I mentioned in my presentation, THEC has established mission for all of the institutions. THEC also has the responsibility to provide opportunities for the educational enhancement of the state. So every decision you make should be consistent and supportive of those objectives and those missions of THEC. And it's one of the reasons why I actually put in my presentation several comments with regards to how not only our university, how our university aligned with the state goals, but also aligned with THEC mission as a coordinating body and as a judge and jury as to what is in the best interest of the state. And if I did not believe that this was not in the best interest of the state, or that we could not make a case to you all as commission members, knowing your responsibility, I would not be here today.
Commissioner Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. President McPhee, thank you for your comments today and your passion for this issue. My understanding is Valparaiso is not accepting first-year law students, and so my question, and back to the financials, what is your minimum class size that you would shoot for in 2019?
If I recall in the performance, 70 students for the first class.
Secretary Hargett.
Questions today. If I could just get the Vice President of Finance back up for just a moment. In the budget y'all submitted, I just want to make sure I understand where this is. I know on page 3 of the LOI that y'all have between MTSU and Valparaiso, it talks about a sum not to exceed $2 million MTSU will pay Valparaiso. Just if you could, I know it's a non-recurring expenditure, but just let me know where I can find that on your attachment A, appendix B here.
Okay, it should, if I'm thinking right, it's at the top section, the non-recurring.
I see
should
new,
be right under capital.
I see new and renovated space.
Yes.
I see $3.5 million.
Right, and
but that wouldn't seem to me to be a transition
there
payment.
should be two $1 million payments, and they are out in 2020.
Okay, in 21, 22,
yes.
and 22. Okay.
Yes, they
All
have
right.
been deferred out.
Thank you very much.
After the first graduating classes.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Coben.
While you're there, please, sir, a question. You mentioned that the scholarships are in operating, and I see $410,000 allocated in operating expenses for 70 students.
Yes, we're not discounting. They're our scholarships are not going to be huge that first year or two. They're not going to be discounted because our tuition rate is so small.
But it is in line with University of Tennessee at Knoxville, as well as University of Memphis.
And we'll have some other scholarship availability, outside with our other scholarships on campus as well. As Dr. McPhee said, we have other resources on campus that they will be able to tap into and get other scholarship opportunities as well. So,
Commissioner Dishner.
Dr. McPhee, if I might ask you another question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious if there was consideration of how, if this is approved, how it would serve underrepresented populations, particularly in the report we received, we had, it states that there's a shortage of lawyers in Tennessee in rural areas that no one wants to live in. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking that Lieutenant Governor Ramsey and I might take exception to that. But that being said, you mention a relationship with TSU that makes a lot of sense. Was there consideration of maybe doing that with other universities in the state who are principally serving rural areas? Perhaps there could be a relationship there.
Yes, and with the TSU, we're both talking about economic and racial and ethnicity, not just one. So it is their first generation. MTSU is a first generation institution. 27% of our students are minorities, African American, Asian, Hispanic, and we have a significant number of those that go on to law school. We've also had some discussions about the counties, the surrounding counties around Rutherford County, where there are needs and that you need individuals who will be trained to work in those areas. And so that's also on the books. But again, as we put this together, we start out with TSU, and we feel that we'll branch out from there.
Other questions? Yes, sir. Treasurer Lillard?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to ask, is this treated like any other program that THEC approves in the sense that there is post-program implementation review by the THEC staff, et cetera, et cetera? You know, as you know, we periodically review programs that are approved and have the ability to take action with respect to them. So I just want to hear from the staff or from you about that.
I'm going to defer to Mike, but it's my understanding for a program like this, there would be a 7-year post-approval monitoring program where they would have to report to us annually with respect to their performance, but I'll defer to Mike on that.
If the letter of notification is approved today, Mr. Treasurer, that would then bring forth the need to receive the full new academic program proposal, which we have conveyed to MTSU. Given the depth of this inquiry, we would be able to do very quickly, especially given the timeline they have with the ABA. That new program proposal would provide a template for evaluation for finances, enrollment, and ultimately graduation, and we would present the first of those reports in January of 2020.
Other questions? Okay, Dr. McPhee, thanks very much.
Welcome, thank you.
Okay, we are now at the deliberation portion of our meeting, and we're at 10 after 12. I know Treasurer Lillard has an appointment at 12:30. I don't know how long we want to debate. There may be lots of debate. There may not be. I don't know. Do we want to adjourn for lunch at this point and come back and do our deliberation and vote, or do we want to press forward? Okay. All right. Very good. Well, I've been in consultation with our general counsel about this procedure because, as those of you who follow higher education know, we're not, at least the 6 years that I've been on the commission, we've not had a situation like this arise from a procedural standpoint. So I'm going to make a motion, and then I'm going to ask the general counsel to explain the effect of that motion, and then we'll proceed from that point. So my motion is to support and approve the letter of notification of the MTSU Law School. And I'm going to ask our general counsel to explain the effect, if I get a second, to explain the effect of the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The matter's being brought to THEC seeking approval for the program. Therefore, the Commission's decision and vote consists of a yes or no vote on the application and the question is presented, which is the letter of notification for this proposed JD program. Simply stated, a vote, an aye in the affirmative, would be supporting approval for this program. A vote in the negative or nay would be a vote in non-support of the program progressing forward.
Very good. So there's a motion on the floor to support the letter of notification. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Johnston. Now's the time to debate. Floor is open.
I am curious to know from the University of Tennessee, since it's the one public institution that seems to have a footing with the law programs in Nashville, how would it affect the third-year law students and their ability to do their, I forget the actual name of it, the experiential program, excuse me, the residence program. Would that diminish? Would it stay the same? Would we have to find a new place for University of Tennessee students to go do their residencies?
Dean Wilson, if there's no objection, I'm happy to hear from Dean Wilson. Is there any objection to that? Okay, Dean Wilson, you're recognized. Yes, ma'am, please.
So I think the answer to that is any additional students that would be placed in externships or basically work opportunities creates obviously competition for those slots. I would hope that we would continue with our semester in residence program. Would it be slightly harder? I think it would, just as it would be slightly harder to find employment upon graduation.
Thank you.
Floor's still open. Questions, comments?
I'm not really sure who I'm asking this question of. I think it's really more for my personal clarification. There are three things I've heard that I want to understand that I have heard correctly. And one is that the law schools the public law schools we have in Tennessee at this time can increase capacity. That they are running at a deficit, and that there are fewer LSAT test takers in Tennessee. Are those three, did I hear those 3 points correctly? I'm not sure who I'm asking.
Maybe unless there's an objection, we'd ask the consultant to come back to the podium and answer the question.
And Mr. Chairman, too, I think there's a low threshold, too, if we have two deans present, also to just ask them, are you being cross-subsidized by other organizational units? That's question 2.
And I would welcome the deans to come up and respond to the questions about being under capacity. It is my understanding that neither of the public law schools are at the same level of enrollment as they were in the 2010 to 2012 era. I also understand that things have improved very slightly over the last couple of years, as the statistics that President McPhee gave you attested to. So there is capacity. Things have turned around a little, but they have not yet reached the levels that they were at about 5 years ago.
To put that in numbers, we could accept an additional 35 students a year.
What about from Knoxville?
So we used to accept approximately 160 students. We now accept about 125 per year.
Floor remains open. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Any further debate?
Mr. Chairman, could I ask, what is the position of THEC under the law currently and under our procedures in regard to budgets of LGIs, locally governed institutions, and of course the University of Tennessee system, as to how much oversight, if you want to call it that, we give in terms of allocations within a university's budget? Because, I mean, the deans of the law school have said here they're basically subsidizing their law school programs, and I assume that's an internal decision for each university to make, basically. But I wonder, do we have anything to offer in terms of the THEC's view on that? Because that's a key element. I mean, President McPhee has admitted there are reallocations involved in their establishing of this transfer here. And I'd just kind of like to know what the official position is on that.
Absolutely, Mr. Treasurer. I'm going to ask Stephen Gentile, our Associate Chief Fiscal Officer, to elaborate. The very short answer is the institutions are delegated full governing authority over their own budgets.
Yes, thank you, members of the Commission. Stephen Gentile, Associate Chief Fiscal Officer at THEC. Yes, sir, and Mike summed it up very quickly. The Commission overall, we review operating budgets as they come in and transmit that on to Finance and Administration, but we hold no power to suggest how much or how they should distribute. That is at MTSU's level as a governing board.
Thanks, Stephen. Commissioner Johnston.
Mr. Chairman, do I understand where we are is we have a motion on the floor and we're in the discussion phase of that motion?
We have a motion, we have a second, we're in debate discussion.
And so following this, we will take a vote.
That's right.
If it's okay, I'd like to go ahead and make a statement then at this point. Obviously, we're here at a new academic program approval. Under those, we have, which we've heard from today, we have to look at academic quality, maximize cost effectiveness, fulfill student demand, avoid and eliminate unnecessary duplication. We're also to encourage cooperation among all institutions. That may be a bridge too far for today, with the exception of TSU. When you get into the legislative directive for higher education, it says we must address the state's economic development and workforce development while increasing degree production. In a business world, if you will, or in a situation like this, I very much believe in location, location, location. And we heard today about networking also. This proposal is in the right location. As far as field placement or exponential learning, work-based learning is very much a driver of Drive to 55, and I think those issues can be resolved. Our consultant cites it will increase competition. I think that's a good thing. It will offer an opportunity to produce a new law school, and with an innovative focus and practical teaching. It is about producing lawyers, but the JD Advantage positions are real. This new school will be disruptive, and like the disruptive technology, which is changing the law profession, such as AI, artificial intelligence. I do think that MTSU must revisit their financials and scholarship, as several of the commissioners have pointed out. But it's very possible that the MTSU Board of Trustees could rally around the school and raise the tuition money or scholarship money. Certainly it's costly to launch and operate. All startups are costly to launch and operate. I do take exception to the characterization of the THEC consultants' feasibility study, and I support the timely and outstanding work of the THEC staff. Notwithstanding that, I will support this LOA.
Other questions or comments? Yes, sir. Treasurer Lillard.
I want to comment that I'm prepared to support the application of MTSU, and that comes with a warning, though, and it's similar to what Commissioner Johnson just pointed out, and that is that we at THEC have a responsibility to be sure that program applications that come before us are carried out in a manner consistent with what was represented to the Commission. This particular application to me, as a lawyer, a graduate tax attorney who's been involved in mergers and acquisitions, big ones, for 30 years before I became state treasurer, appears to be an extremely big lift. Not only from a financial standpoint, but from an operational standpoint. I think Commissioner Johnston was speaking to that. And so in that regard, I think that's part of the warning here is that I know the board is comprised of very well-suited corporate executives who know this well, but there have been many private companies who have publicly traded companies rather, that have foundered on the point of trying to acquire various entities and incorporate them into their business operations. It has not worked properly. I am concerned in saying that and troubled that this has an effect on the University of Tennessee Law School at Knoxville and, of course, the University of Memphis Law School in Memphis, where I graduated with my Juris Doctor degree. However, as Dr. McPhee pointed out, we don't guarantee anybody a market. And so from that standpoint, competition is not a bad thing. But it does point up the need to be sure that these institutions have some kind of coordinated strategy from the THEC standpoint to deal with their respective programs. And I'll close by saying that in the time that I've been on THEC, I've been treasurer for 10 years now, we often approve applications for things or deal with them, but approve them in most all cases that trouble me a lot. And a lot of those have to do with establishing of programs. And we've had some recently from other institutions that have spoken here today and everything. So in that regard, I hope that the THEC staff will in the future rigorously review all of these programs that come before us, including this program, to be sure that they are meeting, again, the representations that have been made. Because if it for any reason should work out where this is a law school, it's not an accredited law school, or it's a law school that does not have the reputational value that it should, or any of the other myriad of things that could happen here. And I'm not trying to be negative, but I'm just being practical and pointing out what needs to be a concern, that I hope that this commission will take appropriate action. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Lillard. Other comments? Yes, ma'am.
I have one more comment. My concern is for the whole state, really, but right now concentrating on Middle Tennessee State and the wonderful work you have been doing. Controller Lillard is correct. This is a very heavy lift, and I am concerned that the quality of the student that you will have to accept rushing through this process so that you can open your doors less than a year from now will not be those elite students that could flood the growing population and job market in Middle Tennessee in future years. I would hate to see Middle Tennessee State University, after all of the great things you've done, find that your first class of your sterling, beautiful law school cannot find a job and cannot compete in the current climate, which probably has a lot to do with the dilemma that we're in today. 10 years ago, well, no, 10 years ago it would have been worse. 15 years ago, this might have been the easiest thing in the world to do, but the climate for employment of qualified lawyers today, that pond is shrinking, and I don't think I'm going to be able to support this proposal.
Thank you, Commissioner Coben. Commissioner Sulyak, and then Commissioner Watson. After that. Well, Commissioner Watson, I was going to ask, Kara wants to comment, I think.
Yeah, so I think, much to echo Commissioner Cobain's points, we're not just approving and considering a new law school at a public university in Nashville, we're also looking at the acquisition of a current law school and the successes of that law school. In my opinion, there are two ways to look at success of a law school. One is at the bar passage rates, which we have Valparaiso's current passage rates, and the other is whether or not the graduates can obtain a job, which we can't necessarily say what that would be if the law school were to move to MTSU without projections. And looking at what was given to us in Table 16 of the report, we have about 90% passage rates for the 6 law schools that are currently in state of 2015 graduates passing the bar exam, whereas Valparaiso's is 69.35%. That is a 20% gap. That is 1 in 5 students not passing the exam that are taking it. And to me, that is a concern. Are we bringing in a program that is not going to succeed? Are we going to have graduates that cannot pass the bar exam and then cannot practice, not even looking at whether or not there will be jobs? Can they actually set out to do what they sought out to do when entering school?
Thanks very much. Commissioner Watson?
Yes, I think the location, as Jimmy says, is important, but location is not going to increase the number of qualified applicants. And that's a real problem. I think we need to consider the collateral damage that will occur to University of Memphis, to University of Tennessee, Knoxville, which could be substantial, as well as the collateral damage that could happen to MTSU itself, because you're going to divert, looks to me like 20 plus, maybe $30 million of cash. That's a lot of money. And I can tell you, as a just recently retired lawyer, that the difficulty for students not in the top 10% of their class to get jobs with big law firms is essentially zero. It's like going to be an NBA player. It's just impossible. There are a lot of other jobs out there that law degrees will help, but in professional law, we just got too many qualified candidates for the jobs. So I'm really concerned about the collateral damage that we will have, and also the resources that institutions like the University of Memphis Law School and Tennessee will have to employ to move into this next generation of training people with artificial intelligence, robotics, and things like that. There was an announcement today by MIT that's spending $1 billion to establish a bilingual curricula to have history majors talk tech. So we're faced with some dramatic economic pressures on law schools and other schools to move their curricula into the 21st century. So I think this is really problematic. I will say for Dr. McPhee, if you don't have an honorary law degree, somebody needs to give you one, because that was one hell of an advocacy. And congratulations.
Thanks, Commissioner Watson. Other questions or comments? We ready for the question? Everybody ready to vote? Let me state the motion again. The motion on the floor is a motion to support and approve the letter of notification for the law school for Middle Tennessee State University. It received a second. A motion that's, or a vote that's yes or aye is a motion to support. A no vote is to not support. And this motion will be the only motion that will be made. This will be the final determination. So I'd ask, with that, unless there are any questions of our general counsel, I'll ask him to call the roll. Call the roll, Mr. Sloan.
Chairman Cope.
Yes.
Commissioner Dishner. Aye. Commissioner Roach.
No.
Commissioner Stafford.
No.
Commissioner Wharton.
No.
Commissioner Coben.
No.
Commissioner Watson.
No.
Commissioner Winton.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnston.
Yes.
Secretary Hargett.
No.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Comptroller Wilson.
No.
Commissioner Solyak.
No.
Mr. Chairman, we have 9 nays and 4 ayes.
Okay, very good. Well, in that case, the motion. Yeah, that's not the count I've got.
Oh, please.
Yep.
Board Counsel, may I make a staff request? We're going to read back each commission member and the vote that is logged.
So sorry. Commissioner Cope.
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Dishner.
Aye.
Commissioner Roach.
No.
Commissioner Stafford. Commissioner Wharton.
No.
Commissioner Coben.
No.
Commissioner Watson.
No.
Commissioner Winton.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnston.
Yes.
Secretary Hargett.
No.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Comptroller Wilson.
No.
Commissioner Solyak. Mr. Chairman, you have 5 ayes and 8 nays.
Okay, based on that, the motion fails. Floor is open for a motion to adjourn, there being no further business.
So moved.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify so by saying aye. Aye. Meeting's adjourned.